Hello. Hello. I'm back. Happy Monday. Oh boy, it's been a day. We're going to do some true crime and then we're going to maybe do a Melly After Dark because, oh boy. What a day. It's been a long day for me today, so I'm really excited to come on here and just talk true crime for a little bit. And then we'll do an after dark after this. So if you're new here, hello, welcome. I am Melly. This is my channel. We do things my way here. We do mostly true crime, but we like to have fun and get spicy late at night. So we do Melly After Darks and we just hang out there. So make sure you subscribe, like, do all the YouTube things. We are continuing the Bryan Kohberger case. I have been covering it here for quite some time. I do have a playlist, so make sure you check that out. We are finishing the book tonight, I think, and then I'm going to take a couple days off Kohberger because I know it's like in everyone's face. And then we're going to I'm going to continue covering the newly released court documents. I do have them all, but I want to kind of go through them beforehand because we read a lot of documents here, but I want to go through them beforehand and kind of give more of like my opinion. So, and my take on them. So we'll do that on Wednesday. Tomorrow we'll be live with a different case. So yay, thank you for being here. We're going to read the book. Hello. Thank you for being here. We're so happy to have you here. I saw Dodge became a new member. Hello, Dodge. Welcome back. I saw 269 and Abuelita's Journey. We are reading the Bryan Kohberger book. If you are not aware, and this is your first time here, this is part 4, probably the end. I don't know. I think I can get through it in like an hour. I really do. I'm a fast reader. And there's part 1 through 3. And, you know, this case is just wild. The Idaho Four book written by James Patterson. It's really good. We are, like I said, we're almost towards the end. So I'm going to recap on the last chapter. We were at the point where they're just kind of going over like how the police handled it. So he finds himself, Pullman Glenn Johnson, who's a regular at Evan's show, knows the story of the Russells. Oh, this is when the chancellor of Washington State University got called out for having like multiple cases on the campus that, well, not on the campus, but people that went to that college that committed like horrible crimes, I believe. And I guess she was being talked about in the last chapter, like basically like they were going to her and being like, well, you know, now there's this case, the Idaho Four, but you know, the last few that you handled or, you know, whatever wasn't that good, pretty much. So we're going to continue chapter 105, Pullman, Washington, December 30th, 2022. In fact, the Washington State University administration is in total meltdown. Inside Wilson Short Hall, phones are ringing off the hooks as the news of Kohberger's arrest spreads like wildfire. Professor Snyder is bombarded with calls. So too is Professor Wiltis. The last people either one wants to engage with right now are members of the media. Wiltis is distraught. It was he who admitted Kohberger. A day or so later, he runs into the WSU Chief of Police, Gary Jenkins, in the corridor, and Wiltis almost collapses. He was about ready to break down. Jenkins said, I just feel horrible. I'm the one who accepted him into this program, so he felt responsible. So Bryan Kohberger was like the 3rd student who was involved in the criminology department who then committed like crimes. And so they were kind of giving, you know, there was backlash about that. Because then here comes Idaho Four case. So they were like, why does students from your department keep doing these horrific things? So he says, I feel so horrible. I'm the one who accepted him in the program, so he felt responsible. As Evan Ellis predicted, the administration's mandate, don't give interview, comes down very quickly from on high to the faculty and the students in the Department of Criminal Justice. That's the message in the email that Ben Roberts and the other members of Kohberger's cohort received from WSU administration. I know, hello, we learned that in the last live. So I'm going to cover a few of them too. I think they're worth looking into. But one of them was, I believe, I can't remember the names, but I'll definitely cover them on tomorrow on the live that we do regarding the court docs. Ben and the others are in transit back to Pullman after the holiday break when they receive the email, which is shortly followed by a bombardment of emails and calls from the media. Kohberger's class list is on WSU's website for further 24 hours before the department takes it down, citing privacy. The students immediately reach out to one another, torn between shock and disbelief. What had they missed? And worse, as advanced students of criminal minds, how had they missed it? I can't think of a group of people who would ever be positioned to see this sort of behavior. The red flags associated with it in their own ranks, Ben said, and we just completely didn't see it. Several of them struggle with the idea that Kohberger was just there in the midst, sharing office space in classes. It's one thing to study criminology from the relatively safe of academia ivory tower, Ben said, but it's quite another to have quadruple homicide on your doorstep. So when the graduate students arrive on campus, Washington State University administrators are ready for them. There's a meeting attended by staff and students in which they learn they will receive psychological support from counselors loaned out by Gary Jenkins Police Department. It's much needed. The group feels not only blindsided by what happened, but betrayed. And the curt answers they get from the faculty in the meeting don't help much. We enter criminology because we want to make the world a better place, Ben said. There's a general interest not really taking in the reins of power, but in figuring out how those reins of power can affect people and how you can service the system to be better. And so when you see somebody run off and do the exact opposite of that and make the world a very, very dark and ugly place for somebody, it sort of really is the ultimate betrayal of everything that I think a criminology program stands for. Making things worse is that the group is now under siege on campus. Journalists post as students. The cohorts wind up locking their office because random strangers mill around, holding out their phones, wanting a quote. The cohorts lock down. They decide to protect the members' sanity and for practical reasons of getting on with their work, they'll follow the case and they'll talk to the investigators when they inevitably come to question them. But no longer they want to discuss Bryan Kohberger, even amongst themselves. Moscow, Idaho, December 30th. Dean of Students Blaine Eccles gets up around 6 a.m. and sees he missed a call from Captain Tyson Barrett the night before at around 11. It's rare that he misses calls. Usually his wife Shelley gets to the phone if he can't, but they both had fallen asleep. He texts the officer, "Hey Tyson, what's up?" Before he gets a response, he sees a news flash. Moscow PD is holding a press conference. They arrested a suspect in Pennsylvania. He attends Washington State University. Eccles feels like a huge weight just lifted off him. Once he learned that the alleged perpetrator wasn't from our community, that was such a relief, he said. Just knowing what it meant for our students, I knew they'd feel more secure. He texts Jenna Hyatt, the dean of students at WSU. In the weeks since the murders, he's gotten to know Jenna well. The outreach he's received from her has been so overwhelming that he's ashamed that UI hasn't done more for the campuses during tragic times. She sent counselors to man the UI counseling center so that the UI team can attend the vigil. She sent care packages galore. He considers her a good friend. So now he texts her, sympathizing. The tidal wave that just hit our campus is about to hit you. Whatever she needs, he wants to help. December 30th still, Moscow, Idaho. Lexi Patterson, daughter of local lawyer Mike Patterson, is pissed. She's on TikTok on her phone watching all the videos that Washington State University students are making about Bryan Kohberger. Apparently, the guy was a TA. He was hired by Washington State University. Washington State University has a reputation locally for hiding bad news. Lexi knows a lot about this because her mom works there, so she's heard the stories. Their hazing, it's much worse than ours, she says, explaining that WSU's Greek life, unlike the University of Idaho's, is not regulated by the Interfraternity Council. 3 weeks after Kohberger's arrest, 19-year-old Washington State University student Luke Tyler dies in his bed, a quote-unquote suicide after being badly hazed, and the school does not issue any comment. Lexi's mom tells her that the staff is very, very upset. That is major to me because I always thought something shady. If you guys know here and been following me for a while, you know I think there's something shady within that police investigation and with that university and the house being taken down. And I just don't get good vibes. And you know, this is crazy. A hazing accident, and then they said it was suicide. That's wild. It's sad. And when I think of this, I think of Riley Strain. I don't believe that was an accident. I don't. We've covered that case here before. If you haven't checked out, like I said, my prior content, I actually like my prior content a lot more. Like, well, we covered a lot of good cases. Courtney Clenny, we covered Ashley Bocanegra. I'm one of the fewer creators who has covered that case fully because I got all the body cam footage and everything. And then we've covered everything, Wade Wilson, etc. But I believe the school had something to do with Riley Strain. And I don't mean in his death. I think in the whole partying thing of it and fraternity brothers being there and all of it, the hazing stuff. I don't get a good vibe. Anyways, let's move on. That's for another conversation. She can see on TikTok that Kohberger's former students are talking about all the red flags: his harsh grading of women, his rude remarks to women in class, his aggression, his stalking of someone, his social difficulties. So where is the statement from WSU about the school's role in this? He was there, hire a teacher, a TA, Lexi said, after learning about Kohberger's past disciplinary problems. They haven't even addressed that aspect, and I think that's disgusting, and that reflects a lot on a community. I know my mom and people that work there were pissed. Her mom will end up leaving. The only silver lining, and it's very, very thin one, is that Kohberger's arrest removes a question mark Lexi had about the possible role of someone she went to Moscow High School with, Emma Bailey. And we know Emily, I think is their friend. Emma lived near the King Road house and would months later face drug-related charges and connections with the suspicious death of another UI student. Yes, it's the one who I was thinking of. Prosecutors dismissed the case. So why did Bryan target 1122 King Road? Because it was a party house, because he knew people would be messed up and having a good time and be out of their senses, right? And this is also a red flag. We just learned about the university, the hazing accidents, accidents, and, all that other stuff. And now we learn this. Someone on King Road, you know what I mean? I just think Melly, do you think they're connected? Yeah, I think somehow they are. I don't know. I have a bad feeling about this. I feel like we're missing still a lot of information. Do you guys feel that way? I mean, even though we have the court documents, I'm still left with so many questions. It's kind of weird. We've basically gotten through the book as well. And a lot of people are giving this book a lot of flack and a lot of support, but a lot of people say like, oh, it's a bunch of lies. No, these are actually like real interviews and stuff. It's James Patterson, so he does a good job. Okay, so let's read that again. Emma lived near the King Road house and would months later face drug-related charges in connection with the suspicious death of another UI student. Prosecutor dismissed the case. When the vandal alert went out about an unconscious person and then Lexi heard about the murders, she was worried that drugs were involved and Emma was involved. But when she learned it was a knife attack and that drugs were not involved, she stopped suspecting Emma. When Lexi sees all the stuff floating around on TikTok about Kohberger and his strange behavior, she's relieved that he's not from Moscow. Even so, as she looks around at the enhanced police presence and the way everyone now locks their doors and cars at night, she realizes that the imprint Kohberger made on Moscow is going to last a very long time. People think they know how it affected our town, she said, but they don't. It isn't the same. We lock all of our doors, all of our car doors. Our little town isn't as safe as we thought it was. And in her mind, Washington State University is primarily to blame. Hey, everyone. Hey, Lily. Good to see you, love. Montana, December 30th. Moscow's mayor, Art Beggett, is spending the holidays in his office in the grid cabin in northwest Montana one morning, and there's an unexpected knock on the door. It's one of his neighbors. She tells him there's been arrests in the case. Beggett treks with her to the cabin to borrow her Starlink internet connection. He contacts the city council and gets a sneak peek at the arrest and extradition documents. He immediately understands why it took a few weeks for the investigators to get Kohberger's DNA. The public does not realize how long DNA analysis takes and believes results should be available in a TV crime show fashion timeframes, he said. In my day job as a food scientist biochemist, I know better. He quickly gets up to get speed on Bryan Kohberger. Thank God the guy is from Pullman and not from Moscow, Beggett thinks. And where the hell has Pullman been on this anyway? Have they not been looking out for white Elantras? That was out in the public. And as for Washington State University, he thinks this comes at a tricky juncture. The school has lost its footing. That's the most common view in the area. I think they've sort of forgotten what they're supposed to be there. Beggett said. You're land-grant university, which means you should be primarily involved in research associated with agricultural, mining, forestry, issues like that, instead of which the school has focused on football. The athletic department has run up $1 million debt, a $20 million debt, and now the Pac-12 conference has been depleted because apart from Oregon State, all other schools have left. There are rumblings that the faculty is about to deliver a vote of no confidence in the administration. Beggett is going to sit back and watch this unfold with a little bit of schadenfreude. There's a lot of connectivity for obvious reasons between Moscow and Pullman. They share an airport and an aquifer, but also an unspoken rivalry. After they are all in different states, each houses a different university. It's a source of pride to the Muscovites that many people who work in Pullman live in Moscow, even though it means they have to pay 5.8% Idaho state income tax. Washington has no income tax. Muscovites believe Moscow has a community spirit, a downtown with lots of bars and restaurants, and that Pullman, situated as it is on Four Hills, does not. You go to Pullman at lunchtime, noontime, things are happening. Go back at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, it's like tumbleweeds are blowing gently down the streets, Beggett says. He launched into a joke he said he probably shouldn't tell, but what the heck? What's the difference between Pullman and the yogurt? The answer is that yogurt has live culture. Beggett says that the sudden twitch and focus will turn out to be costly for Pullman. I don't know why, but Washington State University and Pullman are both completely and utterly unprepared for the attention to shift in their direction. Beggett said they were caught flat-footed. Puerta Aventuras, Mexico, December 30th. Hey, Kat Randall. I don't get that. I always locked my doors and stuff. Maybe because I always like to crime, but I never not. That's kind of odd to me when people say that, to be honest. I don't know. I guess it was a thing, though. December 30th, 2022, Mexico. Emily comes down to the kitchen in her pajamas. Hunter Johnson and her parents are already sitting there talking. They found him, her mom says, and she hands Emily her phone. Emily looks at the photo. She's never met this guy. She and Hunter feel certain that neither had Xana or Ethan. Josie and Lyndon check in, and it turns out that they never met him either. It's mystifying. Josie immediately searches for Bryan Kohberger on Instagram, but she's too late. If he had a real footprint there, it's gone. But there's a plethora of fake accounts. She even gets a DM from one of them. Hey, it's Bryan. Sorry for killing your friends. Although she's heard the news she's been hoping for, Emily doesn't feel the emotional release she's expected to. Although there was someone arrested, there was no fear that had left my body, she said. She doesn't really believe it can be this guy, some random stranger. It's the one possibility she hadn't thought about. Why would someone unconnected to any of her four friends have murdered them? Just like everybody else out there, she said, she expected it to be someone they knew. Over and over again, she reconstructs the events of that night, this guy entering the house, and replays them in her mind. Why Xana? Why did he ignore Dylan? I have wondered a million times over why he walked away and didn't look in the other rooms. If Xana and Ethan, if Maddie and Kaylee, why not the rest, she said. I also just try to keep a positive mindset and say, thank God, not the rest. You know, I kind of agree with how Emily feels here. Like, I always thought that was weird that he let not that I wanted them to be gone, but like that Bryan left them two other roommates alive. I don't know. I thought everyone locks their doors. Right, hello. You and I on the same page. Lake County, Pennsylvania, December 30th, the same day. Josh Ferraro is on edge, waiting for the news. Last night, Grace, a friend he works with at the swim-in zone, a local pool, told him that her dad was part of the state police team staking out the home of the suspect in the Idaho Four killings. She tells him that it's former DeSales student. Josh is shocked. He went to DeSales. He studied criminal justice, then spent 3 years as a correctional officer. So he feels like he has more understanding than the average person about why people commit serious crimes. The people he's seen locked up, they look like average Joes. They are average Joes, in fact, for most of their lives. But underneath there's an itch. And these people spend their lives waiting for the chance to scratch it. They put themselves in places where the opportunity is readily available. On December 9th, for the heck of it, Josh made a TikTok video suggesting the profile of whoever did this is a single male between the ages of 20 and 30. That's because, he theorized, Moscow was a college town and the suspect would need to blend in. Still, when the face and the name of Bryan Kohberger flash on his TV screen, he's taken aback. Something about the name rings a bell, but that face? He doesn't remember that face until he checks his phone and sees his old emails. Oh shit, he says. It's the ghost. His lab partner on a biology project. The strange guy who showed up promptly for classes, then vanished into his car and drove off into a assortment of jobs. The guy who didn't speak to anyone except the professors, who occasionally hung back to talk to Professors Ramsland and Bolger. When Josh last saw the suspect's face, it was fuller. It was different. Josh is shocked. Nothing about Kohberger stands out in his memory as a red flag. Nothing. Quite. Yes. Strange. Yes. Awkward. But a murderer? There's nothing to this guy except he was a good student, Josh said. He reaches for his phone and texts as many of his classmates as he can find. Does anyone remember anything peculiar about Bryan Kohberger? Anything that would indicate he turned into a mass murderer? They ask one another the same question. When they look back, what did they miss? He was exhausted. Yeah, I could see that, Melissa. Center Valley, Pennsylvania, December 30th. DeSales University professor Katherine Ramsland is deeply frustrated. As soon as the news breaks that the suspect is arrested for the murders of the Idaho student was a student of DeSales, the university issues an etiquette to the faculty. No one who taught Bryan Kohberger is to say anything. So the expert in forensic psychology and extreme offender finds herself in an extremely ironic situation. She's the author of 72 books, more than 2,000 articles, and a Psychology Today blog called Shadowboxing, the tagline for which is a blog that probes the mind's dark secrets. And yet, she's not allowed to talk or write about the one murder case she has personal knowledge of, for which she may or may not be called to testify. The case involving her former student, Bryan Kohberger. Her inbox and voicemail are cluttered with endless media requests that she has to decline. She reads media reports describing her classes, like her psychological sleuthing class in the crime scene house, where she staged murder scenes using dummy bodies and fake blood and asked the student to act as detectives. She reads recollections of Kohberger as one of the better students, someone who evidently wanted to impress Ramsland by reading her books, including her most well-known, Confessions of a Serial Killer about Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. In articles discussing her classes, including her course on spree murders like Elliot Rogers, her student tells the media they remember Kohberger dedicating himself to the assignments, in particular to Rogers' YouTube video, which was on the syllabus. Classmate Brittany Slavin remembered that he was so advanced that she once peeked at his paper when stuck on a test, knowing he'd have the correct answers. Brittany said they spent weeks learning from Ramsland via the acronym is path warm. The characteristics that law enforcement should look for to detect a murder in waiting are these. Is path warm. I is for ideation. S is for substance abuse. P is for purposelessness. A is for anxiety. T is for trapped. H is for hopelessness. W is for withdraw. A is for anger. R is for recklessness. And M are for mood changes. What if Kohberger had copied Elliot Roger? The character similarities were there all along. Ramsey students tell the media they learned from Ramsland that psychopaths like Roger and Radar are very hard to detect. Chad Petrapin, another student of Ramsland, said that he remembered Kohberger as a normal guy. Bryan sometimes mentioned going to church and Bible study, but when Chad had asked him questions about the Bible, Bryan didn't always know the answer. But look at Dennis Rader and what Ramsland taught them. Petrapin said, Rader had a son. He had a child. It's like he became a normal person for years. He could have been my church president. Until that is, Rader went out and committed murder. I'm really interested in that Elliot Roger person. Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania, the same day, December 30th. That little prick. He was in my house all the damn time. When Mark Bayalis sees Kohberger's image on TV, he swears. Suddenly, it all makes sense. If the guy is capable of murder, he's certainly capable of burglary. Bayless remembers Kohberger as clear as day, always lurking behind his son and nephew, never saying hello, staring into space. He hadn't connected the dots at the time, but now he's sure of it. Bayless dials the local state troopers and asks them to reactivate the investigation into a series of break-ins he's experienced all these years. He hadn't been able to figure out who was stealing items from his piece metal, maybe up to 25 times, taking $30,000 worth of rare coins, jewelry, and knives from the house out in the woods. The worst of it was that at the time, he worried it was one of the homeless veterans his charity aimed to help. That was a shitty feeling. He'd known it had to be somebody who knew his property well, could get close enough to watch the house and track his movements. Someone who had the time to sit out in the woods, crumpling up the Reese's peanut butter cups droppings on the land. He just hadn't bothered to think about his son Jack's friends until now. The Kohberger guy was always around until he got into heroin, and then Jack had dropped him for a bit. So Mark asks the cops if this time they could do their job because he knows who was stealing from him. But it turns out it doesn't matter. The case is no longer in their system. It's too old. We can't do anything, they tell him. Mark's too busy to press further. Looks like that little prick is going to get his comeuppance anyway. A saying hello and hello, Carlos and Ben. Effort, Pennsylvania, the same day. Poor Marianne. All Connie Saba can think of when she sees the news about Bryan is his poor parents. All the struggles with Bryan, the arguments that he and Michael used to have on the phone when Bryan was in her house hanging out with her son Jeremy. Marianne trying to protect Bryan from Jeremy. The silent breathing over Connie's phone after Jeremy died. Connie wants to believe the best, but she can't. She knows better than to phone Marianne. The woman is a closed book at the best of times, and this is not the best of times. Connie is going to pray for her. Moscow, Idaho, January 4th, 2023. The Suburban pulls into the garage. The steel doors lock behind him. Bryan Kohberger walks down the 20 steps to the fluorescent-lit dungeon that is tiny underground 𝐼𝐸 County Jail. It was state-of-the-art construction back in 1972 when someone with a sense of humor scrawled outside the newly built booking room, "Welcome to the 𝐼𝐸 Hilton." Decades later, the graffiti was removed. Most of the inmates are there for usual reasons: drugs, DUIs, domestic abuse, assault. Technically, the jail with a capacity of 38 inmates is too small to meet the state's legal requirements. There aren't enough rooms. The inmates are housed in a square around common areas, kitchen, shower, and library. They're allowed to just 1 hour a day combined to use the library and the 20 by 10 foot wired-in exercise yard. There's nothing else to do except watch TV. It's a 24-hour cycle of boredom with odd flash of excitement. In 1984, Leslie Rogue, the gentleman robber who was being held for federal bank robbery, walked out, aided by a map and a door opened by the jailer. He was not apprehended until 1996 in Guatemala. He's due to be let out in May of 2034 at the age of 94. In 1992, William A. Davison, a twice-convicted murderer, escaped from the exercise yard. He was captured after a man's hunt lasting a month. The common shared cell for up to 8 people is not where Kohberger goes. Months later, a friend of Josie and Lyndon's who is drunk and booked there for the night sees Kohberger in a cell alone, per his maximum security status. Jail staff are not going to take the risk with him. Inmates have wives and children too, Sergeant Brandon Jordan, the deputy who was injured doing the fatal shooting of Officer Lee Newbill, said. What he did is out of a horror movie. In the prison world, there's a status that comes with harming someone like him. The deputy's priority is to keep Kohberger alive. They need him to face the wheels of justice. Nobody, Jordan said, wants to fuck that up. So a lot of people are like, oh, he's going to be in protective custody. I think for a minute, for a little while, but I don't think forever. There's no way. I don't think so. Part 6, Warpath, Moscow, Idaho, January 5th. They bring Bryan Kohberger up from his cell into the tiny 𝐼𝐸 County courtroom, and he sits in the defendant box within spitting distance of the Goncalves and Laramie families. He's shackled and clad in orange prison clothes. He doesn't turn to look at anyone. His only animated gestures are directed to Ann Taylor, his public defender, who sits easily beside him. Taylor has long, blonde, shiny hair, and everything about her clothing, posture, and demeanor exudes a no-nonsense confidence. If she's ruffled to be representing America's most notorious suspect, she doesn't show it. Taylor works for the public defender's office for 𝐼𝐸 County, where serious crime is far more abundant than it is in 𝐼𝐸 County. In an irony that will soon come to light, one of her clients was Xana's mom. Karen Northington. Taylor avoided the conflict of interest by quietly filing from a withdrawal for Northington's case. Moscow is scarcely unfamiliar territory for Taylor. She attended the University of Idaho's law school. It's almost impossible to find a lawyer in the area who didn't. In fact, the man who gave Taylor her first job is now sitting a couple of feet away from her on the other team, Bill Thompson. Judge Megan Marshall, the Moscow magistrate, is another part of the cozy UI Law graduate circle, and she reads out the charges against Kohberger: 4 counts of murder, 1 of burglary, and she asks if he understands them. He says he does. She explains that the punishment is either the death penalty or life in prison. The prosecutor has 60 days to decide which one he intends to pursue. Judge Marshall sets another court date for a few days hence to determine the date for the week-long preliminary hearing during which the prosecution will lay out its evidence to show grounds for a trial. Steve Goncalves watches it all go down with a mixture of extreme emotions. He has not been eating or sleeping more than 3 hours a night. Christy and Olivia have been telling him they are worried about him, but it's tough for him to sit back and watch this guy with the strange eyes and the passive face, considering the fact that he's alive and Kaylee is dead. Where is the justice in that? Steve read Britt Payne's probable cause affidavit. It was filed 1 hour before the court proceedings began, and there's a lot in it, undoubtedly. The highlight, clearly, is the DNA found on the snap of the knife sheath. It's going to be hard to argue against that. That's what his sources in the local FBI are telling him. DNA is a gold standard of evidence. But Payne's affidavit says that investigators got to Kohberger's DNA via his dad, so the defense could look for loopholes there, and Steve is worried. Will the DNA evidence hold up as legitimate and legitimately obtained? Will the defense try to argue that Kohberger's DNA could have gotten on the knife sheath years before? Steve plans to do his own research on how long DNA could last there. I'm told that this is the version of the K-bar that has a special material for the button, and it's copper-based, and that dramatically speeds up the deterioration of DNA. Tests have shown sometimes less than 24 hours to max 7 days, he said. And what about the lack of an obvious link between Kohberger and the victims? Kohberger wasn't part of Kaylee's circle, so will the lurid speculation that Kaylee had an OnlyFans page or some sort of secret life worsen? I did hear that kind of came out at first. I don't think that has anything to do with anything other than there was a weirdo on there who liked her. And then also, let's go back to where it says Steve read Britt Payne's probable cause affidavit. It was filed 1 hour before the court proceeding. Does that sound familiar with the plea that Bryan Kohberger accepted? You know how... Oh, am I reading too fast? Yeah, slow me down because I do read pretty fast. Remember, they were saying that they didn't get enough notice. And they did it before in a previous hearing here. So that's a little messed up. I agree with Steve Goncalves. Okay, so it says Steve wants to protect Kaylee to be her mouthpiece now that she's unable to speak for herself. But Judge Marshall just made that harder. Ahead of Kohberger's extradition from Pennsylvania, Judge Marshall imposed a gag order stopping the police, investigators, attorneys, and anyone connected to the investigation from talking to the media. The point of this, obviously, is to protect the investigation. There's all them gag orders. But a few days later, without any public process or rationale, she refines the gag order to include the lawyers for the victims' families and witnesses. They were literally trying to gag that from the victims' families, all the information prior. That is crazy. That is so crazy. Hey, Laura. Hey, Rocket Smith. Steve doesn't like this one bit. His attorney, Shannon Gray, and 30 news organizations filed an appeal. Steve's concern isn't simply that his First Amendment rights are being restricted, though this is a legitimate issue. It's that he has seen and felt the harm that occurs when there's a vacuum in the narrative. He's seen all the rumors about Kaylee on Facebook, which Olivia, thankfully, was able to squash. He's seen innocent people like Jack DeCour falsely accused until the police cleared them. Now there's no official check on the rumors and speculation about Kaylee and Maddie other than a trial that could be years away. Kohberger's defense can say anything in the courtroom, and Steve is helpless to speak out against it. All this misinformation will get out there, and then it will just sort of become legend, he says. He's so upset that he stays locked in his home office for hours, glued to internet conspiracies. Concerned, Christy and Olivia come up with an idea to help him. They decide to take control of the Goncalves family Facebook page and repurpose it. Now that Kohberger has been arrested, what had originally been set up to field tips will become a supportive online community, not only for the Goncalves family, but also for other families going through similar experiences. It's a way that, at very least, to tell the world that they are thinking and feeling, a way to keep Kaylee and who she really was alive in the public imagination. Rochester, New York, January 5th. It's the mention of the knife sheath Kohberger left at the scene that convinces Christine Cameron that Bryan Kohberger and Papa Roger are one and the same. I agree with this. We've covered this before. I totally believe that Papa Roger is Bryan Kohberger. or was. When Kohberger was arrested and she saw his face on the news, she thought he looked familiar to the strange profile picture of Papa Roger, but she had told herself she could be wishful thinking. Christine also thought about the fact that Elliot Rodger targeted sorority girls. In particular, he targeted the Alpha Phi sorority, which is Kaylee's sorority. I was like, wait a minute. Kohberger killed 4 people. 3 of them are girls. 3 of them, he's never had a girlfriend. After the arrest, Christine waits for Papa Roger to resurface on the Facebook page and opine about Kohberger, but he doesn't reappear, and his silence starts a frenzy on the Facebook page. People put up screenshots of his earlier post about the murders and highlight the parts of Brett Payne's affidavit that jibe just a bit too neatly with them. There's his obsession with the idea that police had found a knife sheath at the crime scene, his opinion that the killer had been in the house 15 minutes, that he'd stop after killing 4 of exhaustion, that the house was targeted for a reason, that the killer was not in the circle of victims' friends, that he'd left the neighborhood. Once again, the contents of the Facebook page enter mainstream news. On News Nation, Ashley Banfield does several segments on whether Papa Roger could be Kohberger. Christine and Alina half expect to get a call from the FBI or the police. It's not every day that you find you've become the story you are covering. The exposure is helpful, Christine believes, for Alina and herself. It takes the duo a big step closer to building an audience for the true crime podcast they want to host. The Vice Media has signed them to an exclusive deal to report on Kohberger. Christine loves that, and she and Alina are joined at the hip. Both women believe their arrangement works. Alina put in many more hours than her partner on this Facebook page and others they started because, unlike Christine, she's home most of the time because she's struggling with medical issues around an injured back. Alina believes that Christine is fully supportive of her predicament. One night, when Alina was recovering from a procedure, Christine refused to an invitation to go on Ashley Banfield's News Nation show alone to talk about Papa Roger, a sign of how robust their friendship and partnership is. But Alina has often told Christine that she cannot afford to continue to work at nights and days on the pages if they can't find a way to monetize what they are doing. Christine, who has a full-time job, tells her she understands. Their friendship and partnership are above any sort of monetary thing, Christine believes. I would have put her first, Christine said later. By then, it was too late. When Steve turned the podium around, it was. Papa Rogers is the guy who committed crimes and Bryan Kohberger looked up to him. Well, his name is Elliot Rodgers, I believe, right? And he committed all these crimes and Bryan looked up to him and was following his story and I think was trying to replicate it, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to get into that more though. After the book. Troy, Idaho, February 2023. He's been out in the snow for hours. There's something deeply therapeutic about wielding a chainsaw through logs and logs again. In 2 months since Kohberger's arrest, Chief Fry has used this quiet time to think and heal. Even out here on his land, he's never quite been able to forget those insane weeks between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve. Thanks to the gag order, he's no longer being pressured to speak to the press. Fry has said no to every media request. Geraldo, Katie, Couric, Dr. Phil, I turned them all down, he said. For now, it's mostly quiet. Both sides are preparing for the preliminary hearing. At work, he's continuing with the investigation, looking closely at Kohberger's digital footprint and the victims to see if they intersect, to see if they can find the motive. Meanwhile, there's a page on Reddit called Justice for Kohberger that the chief follows for humor and with irritation, on which people insist that Kohberger was nowhere near the house on the night in question and conclude that Fry's wife, Julie, who was elected county clerk in November, is somehow controlling Kohberger's court schedule or giving her husband advance notice of hearings. The chief adores Julie, his wife of 32 years, when she speaks. She's kind of like an E.F. Hutton, he said, so this Reddit nonsense irks him greatly. Other conspiracy theorists even concluded that the chief was the murderer and Kohberger was framed as a scapegoat. Fry looks forward to settling the record straight, as he hoped. Brett Payne's probable cause affidavit definitely quashed some of the police department's worst critics. He received a congratulatory letter from the retired LAPD Deputy Chief John D. White, the chief investigator in the O.J. Simpson case. Dear Chief Fry, congratulations on a job well done. I told my wife after your press conference. This chief knows what he's doing. Your handling the media investigation was a textbook example of how to handle big media cases. And the guy who had emailed him that this would be the next John Benet Ramsey case turned around and congratulated him as well. You might have got the right guy, he wrote. After all their back and forth, Fry was curious about the critic. Tell me about yourself. Fry replied. He learned the guy was 70, had been in oil business in South Dakota before he retired and moved to Florida and had 3 kids, and never ceases to astonish the chief how, when you cut through all the crap, people have more in common with each other than they think. Even Pastor Doug Wilson came to sit in his office recently. The cops had lost their legal battle with the Church of Christ over his psalm singing arrest, and Christ Church was now suing the city for wrongful arrest and the selective prosecution of Wilson's grandson. But the pastor was extending an olive branch because he'd heard that Fry received death threats from Christ Church congregants over the episode. Fry told him that yes, he'd received death threats, but not from Wilson's congregants, some of whom were police officers. I don't care who people are. We get paid and we take an oath to serve all the people, he told Wilson. Fry wishes that Steve Goncalves felt able to trust his department more. The chief hates to feel at odds with the family of a murder victim. He doesn't know how it happened, but he can see that Goncalves' family feels mistreated by the cops, and they do not trust Thompson and his team either. That's upsetting to him. Their lawyer, Shannon Gray, is vocal in the media. He's demanding meetings and wants to be kept in the loop about whatever the cops hand over to Thompson as part of the case. This is often a problem in murder cases. Victims' families think they are owed information, and by law, they do have some rights. But to protect the investigation, they can't be told everything. It's not a perfect system. The chief knows that, and he's upset that the Goncalves family has articulated how upset they are to feel left out. Fry wants to see this case through, but the clock is ticking. He's 54 years old. He believes in change, and the elections for county sheriff will be held in November of 2024. That's the one other job, apart from being police chief, he'd love to have, and by then, he thinks Captain Anthony Dallinger will be ready to replace him. Fry needs to think about the future, so he's taking a moment for himself out here in the woods while he can. He's learned the hard way. You never know what's around the corner. Moscow, Idaho, February 2023. It's around 8 p.m. and pitch black when Ava Woods hears a knock at the front door of her home on 718 Queen Road. She installed a ring camera after the murders so she can see a man standing there. He's dressed in a Moscow PD uniform, but since last November, she doesn't trust anything or anyone. She keeps her door locked and waits. He knocks some more. Eventually, she speaks through the camera. "Who are you here for?" He replies, "I'm here for Ava Wood." Ava had 3 new locks and an alarm system installed after the murders, and now she unlocks and opens the door. He hands her an envelope and speaks in a clipped, formal voice. "You're being subpoenaed for the state of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger preliminary hearing in June." Ava thinks her legs might give away. She starts to shake. She has never been subpoenaed before. "This is the Bryan Kohberger case?" she asks. "Who is it from?" The officer answers, "The defense, and Taylor." "The defense? Do I have to show up?" she asks. "Yes," he tells her. "It's illegal to disobey." As soon as he's gone, Ava slams the door and in tears phones her parents. Luckily, her dad is a lawyer who specializes in bad faith litigation. He advises her to phone Thompson's office and let them know she has been contacted. She speaks to Stacy Osterberg, Thompson's assistant, who suggests she could find out what Taylor wants. So in March, Ava and her dad do a Zoom with Taylor. On the call, Taylor homes in on something Ava told the police the day of the murders. On Friday, October 14th at 1 a.m., she heard someone climb up the metal steps of her apartment, which was across the street from 1122 King Road, and try the door. "You could hear the jingle of my doorknob. It's a finicky doorknob," she said. But the door stayed closed because Ava had put in a deadbolt during her junior year. She told police what she now tells Taylor, that at the time she looked on Snapchat to see if any of her friends were in the area. Saw one, Mason Bangman, and texted him to ask if he had just tried to let himself in. "No," he said. So Ava asked him to check the street. She watched through her bedroom window as Mason and a couple of friends walked into view. He texted Ava that he couldn't see anyone. So Ava went to sleep. She didn't think any more about it until Xana, Ethan, Kaylee, and Maddie were murdered in the house across the street. And then she wondered aloud to the police, was the murderer the same person who tried to get into her apartment 4 weeks earlier? And Taylor asked her to repeatedly describe what she can see of the street from her home. Ava says she can see the front door of 1122 King Road and the street leading up to it. Taylor asked her if the police ever got back to her about the October incident. The answer is no. After Kohberger was arrested and Ava read the probable cause affidavit, she asked if anyone in law enforcement knew if October 14th was one of the 12 times Kohberger's phone had pinged in the King Road area. No one will tell her. It occurs to Ava that if Kohberger wasn't in the area in the pre-dawn hours of October 14th, the defense could argue there was another predator running around. But if he was, Ava guesses from Taylor's other questions that the lawyer is looking for holes in the accounts of the victim's friends. Taylor asked Ava a lot of questions. How well did I know Maddie, Ethan, Kaylee, and Xana? What kind of people were they? Did the roommates ever fight? Did they leave their house unlocked? Did I ever attend the parties they had? How close was I with Dylan and Bethany? We were all in the same room at the police station. Did I know anything prior to the police being called or showing up? Did I know anything while sitting outside? When did I find out all 4 of them were dead? Did I have any knowledge of Kaylee or anyone having a stalker? Did I hear anything that night? What did I do the night before? Why was I outside that morning? How did I get wrapped into this whole situation? Taylor apologizes for putting Ava through this, which is decent, Ava thinks. But Ava, who is back with her parents in California, really does not want to testify. Texts ping back and forth among her friend group. Who else has received subpoenas for the preliminary hearing on June 26th? 2 of Jack DeCour's housemates, including Adam Lauda, the guy in the corner club bar, received them. So too has Ethan's close friend, Peter Elogoriga. He was with Ethan and Xana until the end of the Sigma Chi party on November 13th. Unlike Ava, Adam and Peter can't try to contest the summons because of their location. They live in Idaho. In April, court filings show that Bethany was subpoenaed by Taylor, but because Bethany lives in Nevada, it's been agreed she can be interviewed there instead. How is that fair, Ava, the California resident, wonders. She writes to Taylor's office asking if they will at least pay for her travel and accommodation. They will. When she attends graduation in Moscow in mid-May, she keeps thinking that her next trip to Idaho is going to feel a lot more stressful. She's back home in California a few days later when she hears the news. She doesn't need to return to Moscow for a preliminary hearing because there won't be one. Bryan Kohberger has been indicted for the murders by a grand jury, Bill Thompson, convened in Moscow in secret. All the better for the prosecution, which won't have to show its hand and reveal its witnesses to the defense ahead of trial. Shady, shady. I know she doesn't want to testify, but if my friends were killed like that, I would force myself to do whatever I had to do. But I also understand maybe she couldn't because it was so freaking traumatic. Yeah, I agree, Laura. Moscow, Idaho, May 11th. Emily Lant is already in town for graduation when she gets the email summons from Bill Thompson. He's convened a grand jury and she needs to testify. No one can know. She needs to get to the Latah County Courthouse on Sunday evening when Thompson's teams will prepare her for what to expect at the real thing on Monday morning. Hunter Johnson received the same summons. The only people they tell are their moms, Karen and Jessica, who are with them for graduation. Emily has an immediate problem. She has nothing to wear other than her graduation dress. So Jessica, Hunter's mom, takes her to Target where she purchases a respectable pair of pants. It's hard, if not impossible, to relax through graduation events knowing what lies ahead. As she walks into the courthouse on Sunday evening, Emily glances at a big steel door to the jail. She shudders. Kohberger is down there. She tries to push him from her mind. She and Hunter are separated for the practice seasons. Emily's interlocutor is Ashley Jennings. Emily is nervous answering the questions. There are times when she screws up and starts over. The next morning, she and Hunter find that it's not as easy as they'd hoped to slip away from the friends who are pre-gaming. We've got breakfast plans with our families, they lie. Oh, so do a breakfast shot first, is their reply. That puts Emily on the spot, but nothing is going to induce her to drink. Too much is at stake. She and Hunter are driving 5 minutes from the courthouse when members of Thompson's team text them an alert. There's media outside. Use the side door. When Emily does find herself in front of a jury, she's grateful for the preparation. It's intimidating, but she can do it. They ask the same exact questions she's just rehearsed, and she answers them smoothly. Tell us about the events of November 13th. She and Hunter don't know who else Thompson called for the grand jury, but Emily suspects that Dylan and Bethany may have testified on Zoom. She doesn't see either girl around campus when she and Hunter return to the friends, then ultimately walk for graduation when their respective classes. All she knows is that on May 17th, it's announced that Bryan Kohberger has been formally indicted by a grand jury for the murders of Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee, which means there will be no preliminary hearing. Emily has played her part. I'll call you when I need you, but meanwhile, I want you to get on with your lives. That was Bill Thompson's parting message to Emily and Hunter when they headed back to Boise. But for Emily, returning to normality is a struggle. After the murders, she struggles to focus. She worries that her GPA will not be good enough for her to get into a physical therapy program, so she ends up not applying. She's lost sight of her goals. She feels adrift, no longer the person she was before the murders. Hunter is an athletics coach at Centennial High School in Boise, so he at least has structure in his life. Emily takes a series of part-time jobs and eventually trains to be a dental hygienist, but she knows deep down that she needs to address the trauma of November 13th. She needs to try to get past it. She starts going to counseling and digging deep, learning to be alone, even though, thanks to Hunter, she seldom is. Her doctor recommends she try eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, but when she runs this past Thompson's team, they warn her that this would likely disqualify any testimony she gives at trial because EMDR can affect memory. Emily isn't going to risk that, even though a trial could be many months away. I don't want to testify, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes, she says. She wants to see this through. She wants to get justice for Xana, Ethan, Kaylee, and Maddie. Then, and only then, she will do the therapy. Moscow, Idaho, May 22nd, 2023. Bryan Kohberger keeps his eyes forward, fixed on a district judge, John Judge, who is taking over the case after the indictment. He answers yes and yes over when the judge asks him if he understands the charges and the penalty for each one. If found guilty, Kohberger faces either life imprisonment or the death penalty for each of the 4 first-degree murder charges. Miss Taylor, the judge says, is Miss Kohberger prepared to plead to these charges? She rises and answers, Your Honor, we will be standing silent. The judge pauses. Because Mr. Kohberger is standing silent, he says, I'm going to enter not guilty pleas on each of the charge. If John Judge is surprised, he doesn't show it, but standing silent is not something that happens often. Many suspects don't even know where there's an option besides pleading either guilty or not guilty. Even local attorney Mike Patterson wasn't aware of this option. But Ann Taylor is a very practiced criminal lawyer, and Bryan Kohberger knows more about criminal law than your average suspect. There are 2 reasons, media commentators say, that someone who said he understands the charges and issues stands silent. The first is if there are ongoing negotiations around a plea deal. Do you guys hear that? You know how we think the plea deal was kind of short, shady, rushed, and abrupt? It wasn't. They were already thinking about it here. It says the first is if there are going to be negotiations around a plea deal. I wish we knew if you did see her or not. Few people believe that this is the case here. Everything seems to indicate that Kohberger wants his moment of fame. The second has to do with public perception. In high-profile trials, defendants might want to avoid sparking further public outrage by saying not guilty. It's a nuance that likely occurs only to someone who thinks and cares about the PR ramifications of the court proceedings. Bryan Kohberger, it is reported, cares greatly about the PR ramifications of his case. He watches TV coverage of it much as he can in his jail cell. Steve Goncalves complains publicly and often about Kohberger's privileges. We've got to get this guy. I don't want him ever getting vegan meals, his own TV, his own phone, video conferencing his mother, he said. I got family members that are military. They come home all messed up in the head. All they get is the VA, and this is the way they treat our murders, our mass murders that kill people, vegan meals, TV, room, and board. That's a reason why I was upset too, remember? When I was like, he should have got the death penalty. It's absolutely outrageous, Steve thinks, but so much about the legal processes. Most people have no idea how frustrating it is to be in his shoes. Most people don't think about how little agency a murder victim's parents have. But on his family's Facebook page, he's starting to hear from other victims' parents who say they wish they'd been more proactive and involved in their children's cases. He's getting messages of support from families all around the world. It's hard to juggle his day job doing IT at the hospital and all this, but curating the page brings Goncalves' family together. It gives Christy purpose on her down days. The encouragement spurs him on. Moscow, Idaho. spring 2023. Half a mile from Kohberger's jail cell is his office on Jackson Street. Christchurch pastor Doug Wilson closely follows developments in the Kohberger case and the implications for his family, especially his grandson Rory, and his conviction for illegally affixing a sticker to a pole. This is just personal theory, connecting the dots, he said. I think that the judge marshal did not want to throw Moscow officials under the bus by finding in favor of Rory because that would make the cops look bad. That would make the city of Moscow look bad in the middle of all this. His arguments might not have gotten much traction with anyone other than his own congregants if it weren't for the fact that after Kohberger was arrested, Marshall played into his hands by imposing the controversial gag order on the victims' families' lawyers. When 30 media organizations and the Goncalves attorney, Shannon Gray, filed appeals against Marshall's gag order, Wilson felt deeply gratified. Now, he isn't the only one who thinks Marshall has obstructed people's First Amendment rights. This could be very helpful for Rory's case, he thinks. Just not to put a too fine of a point on it, he says, but Judge Marshall was the one who put the gag order on them, and she was the same person who excluded my grandson's defense. So it's the same. This is a small town. We're talking about the same people. Wilson hoped that given the pressure, Marshall's Superior District Judge John Judge would be sympathetic to Rory's appeal. We heard rumors, he said, that John Judge was not happy with the city of Moscow. But it's May, and suddenly the district judge is under pressure of his own because following the grand jury indictment, he's taken over Bryan Kohberger's case. It's by far the biggest one of his career, most of which he spent as a lawyer in private practice. Later that spring, Judge John Judge denies Rory's appeal. Doug Wilson is annoyed but unsurprised. He thinks that Judge, like Marshall, has no interest in issuing a ruling that could further harm for the reputation of Moscow PD in the wake of the murders. John Judge is from the same network as all local judges and lawyers. He is a UI Law School graduate, just like Bill Thompson, Megan Marshall, Ann Taylor, and even Kathy Mabbitt, the coroner. Wilson, now clear in his own mind that whatever happens in this case has a direct bearing on Rory's, intends to fight on. The Wilsons will appeal Rory's case all the way to the Idaho Supreme Court. They will sue in federal court too. They will spend whatever it takes. They've already surpassed 6 figures. If Kohberger is acquitted, let's say acquitted because of a botched handling of evidence, then our allegation that the cops botched this case is the second verse, Wilson said. But he added, if it comes out that he was caught and he's convicted because of sterling police work, and we will all applaud it, including we would applaud it, then our allegation that the cops were Keystone Cops mishandling all of this becomes more of an uphill climb. It is obviously related either way you go. So whatever happened, Wilson will be watching very closely. The way he sees it, the fate of his grandson, and to some degree, his church hang in balance. Hey, Cree. Moscow, May 12th. It's the Friday before graduation and the eve of the 6-month anniversary of the murders. And it's also a few days before the celebration of the first Maddie May Day, May 25th, Maddie's birthday. Will now be an annual holiday that Maddie's aunt, Katie and Rachel, helped create. They've bought a domain name, built a website, and extended an invitation to all. Join us in continuing Maddie's mission by completing random acts of kindness. We can't wait to hear the stories that emerge as we all remember Maddie on this day and every day. Deedle, as Maddie called her paternal grandmother, Kim Chili, is proud of her daughters for coming up with the idea, and she's excited to go to Moscow that evening with the Laramies and her son Ben Mogen and other family members to spread the word about Maddie May Day. She's got cookies and a note about the new holiday for Moscow police officers and the university staff. We wanted to thank the police department, she said. I feel they've done an amazing job keeping their cards close to their chest and going about their business and doing what they had to do. I know that you're not supposed to say this out loud, but I feel they have their man. When she arrives at the police station, gifts in hand, various officers come in and out of the room as she shares the cookies. Deedle is gratified until that is nearly 2 weeks later on May 25th, Maddie's actual birthday. On that day, she reads in the Idaho Statesman that families of Maddie Mogen and Kaylee Goncalves have filed tort claim notices with the city of Moscow, the University of Idaho, and the Idaho State Police, and possibly, it's suggested but not confirmed, Washington State University. The paper quotes the Goncalves lawyer Shannon Gray explaining that families have filed as legally required within 6 months of the original incident to reserve their right to sue. They haven't sued yet, but they might in the future. Filing a tort claims notice is really just a safeguard, Gray tells ABC News. It's a safeguard to protect the interest of families, the victims, and really the whole community around, because if something goes wrong or was done improperly, then someone is held accountable for that. In May, Steve phoned Stacey Chapin to tell her ahead of time he is filing the tort against the cops and the university. He explains this is nothing against you, and he means it. It isn't even against the police in his mind. He's creating a layer of protection for Kaylee and Maddie. It isn't personal. Stacey doesn't take it personally, but she is quietly upset on behalf of the police and the university. Deedle is devastated. It broke my heart, she later said. She is mortified as she reads on and discovers that the Goncalves family filed theirs on May 2nd and 3rd, but the Mogen family filed on May 11th, the day before she showed up to the Moscow police station with her basket of cookies. The Mogen family designation wrongly insinuates she had part in this. She wants to set the record straight. She would never consider suing the police or the university. This is not us, she said. We've been so thankful to the university, to the police department, and have been treated like royalty through this whole thing. But Kim doesn't want to alienate Karen and Scott Laramie. During Maddie's short life, Deedle had consistent, unfettered access to Maddie because Karen and Scott allowed it. Ben was also made to feel welcome in their home. Even though he still had paternal rights, things could have been a lot less easy, and Karen and Scott not been so generous and welcoming. I love Karen, she said. We stayed really close for Maddie's sake, and Scott too. I really love both of them. Nervously, she phones Bill Thompson's office and asks if she's bound by the gag order. She is not. Then she calls a statesman. She speaks to an editor and tries to explain she'd like to be separated from the Mogen family in future reporting, but she doesn't want to create a story about a fracture in the family. So when the editor asks her if there is an issue, Deedle treads carefully. Well, going forward, we could just make clear who you're talking about, that's all. She hangs up and wishes it were all less complicated. Maddie was such an angel of a person. Deedle has added an angel wing in her memory to the necklace Maddie ordered for her on Etsy that had both of their names. She doesn't get why the Goncalves family seems to be making so many decisions for Maddie's family. She's puzzled about why Maddie's ashes are on their mantelpiece alongside Kaylee's, but she also knows that it's what Karen wants. Deedle thinks if that's the case, then so be it. Karen has lost her only child, and poor Karen has lost her mother in a car accident when she herself was barely an adult. So whatever Karen wants, Deedle will roll with it. August 1st. It's Moscow. It's over 100 degrees when Jim and Stacey Chapin arrive on the UI campus. They are there to drop off Maisie and Hunter for the start of their fall semester, but what they haven't told their children, because they don't want to upset them, is that after they've settled them in, they have another stop to make. Opposite the 𝐍𝐵𝐸 in a nondescript building that has no AC and no electricity is everything Ethan left behind at 1122 King Road. Jim is reluctant to go, but Stacey insists. Damn it, I'm going to get my kid stuff. Dean Blaine Eccles has thought long and hard about how to make the hideous experience as easy as possible for all the parents. He's got bottled water and nitrile gloves on hand. He and a team have staged and divided the campus building to mirror the rooms of the King Road house. We had old desks and we brought in tables and we staged it kind of like a garage sale, Eccles said. We didn't want them to have to worry about opening boxes and being surprised. Eccles has deliberately made sure that the families all come on separate days, and he has security in place just in case. The Chapins walk through a room labeled kitchen to see if there's anything of Ethan's in there. Then they go into the room marked 4, which contains the belongings of Xana and Ethan. Some of Ethan's stuff is spattered with blood. It's upsetting to see. Unsurprisingly, given the heat, the building smells rank. It was hell. I will not lie. It was hell, Stacey said later, but she takes what she needs. She'll put the furniture in the storage until she and Jim have kept in the storage unit she and Jim have kept in Moscow. And she brings the clothes back with her to Priest Lake, where she washes them and puts them away in the basement besides Ethan's ashes. They don't need to overthink it now, but one day she knows when they are ready, Maisie and Hunter and she and Jim will want to choose some pieces of Ethan's old life to hold on to. Going through Ethan's stuff is only part of today's bittersweet experience. Ahead of the trial slated for October, just 2 months away, the court released 1122 King Road, meaning both of the defense and the prosecution teams have no further use for its terms and evidence. Soon after the murders, the owner gave the house to the university, leaving it up to UI to decide its fate. In February, the school announced the house would be torn down. The Chapmans are fervently in favor of the house being demolished as soon as possible. Hunter can see it from his bedroom window at Sig High. So too can many of Ethan and Xana's close friends, like Josie and Ava, Stacy and Jim, believe no one needs to dwell on the horrific events of November 13th, and the house is a horrible reminder. It needs to go, Stacy said, a position reflecting their larger laissez-faire view of the unfolding judicial process. They don't want to spend a second thinking about Kohberger or a trial or any of the legal process behind what they glean from Bill Thompson, whose staff phones regularly to update them. I was always upset about how they tore down that house. I've said it multiple times. Why not wait until it was like all over? I feel like that was shady. It is so sad. Over coffee in La Conner one morning in March, as they watched the sunrise and, like every day, wiped away their tears, Stacy and Jim came to the decision that it was time to look forward, not back. Why would I want to waste my time looking at him? Stacy said, referring to Kohberger. She has for now at least no intention of showing up at any of the hearings or in the future of his trial. Nothing is bringing Ethan back. Out of devastation, the Chapins want to create something positive to Stacy. That's The Boy Who Wore Blue, a children's book she wrote about Ethan with illustrations by Lana Lee. In June, she and Jim travel to New York and she appears on the Today Show. The book's profits will go to the couple's nonprofit foundation, Ethan's Smile. Also, a new variety of tulips Skagit County farmers have named in Ethan's honor. The foundation plans to award scholarship to high schoolers applying to college. While the Chapmans have no interest in the judicial process or the efficiency of the system, Steve Goncalves is on a mission. He asked journalists and local sources in the FBI to help him with research, and on the Goncalves family book page, he refers to himself as a private investigator. From the data Steve receives, he becomes increasingly sure that Maddie was a target. As far as Steve can see, Kohberger liked Maddie's photos on social media. He liked Kaylee's too, but was always in joint photos with Maddie. He wants to figure out how Kohberger appeared to know the layout of the King Road house before entering it on November 13th, and so he strenuously objects in July when the university announces its plans to demolish the 1122 King Road house quickly. Technology changes so fast, he said, so you never know if they discover some new scan or some new kind of phone technology or whatever they want to go back in there and retrace steps. He has a point. Months down the road, there will be back and forth between prosecutors and Kohberger's defense debating the accuracy of the model of the house used at the trial. Shannon Gray puts on a statement from the Goncalves to that effect and says the Kernodles and the Mogens are united on this point. Dean Eccles understands their frustration over the house, but his hands are tied. University administrators are worried that the house is not safe. Investigators tore out pieces of walls and floors, and there are wires hanging out. And it's costing the school around $600 a day to pay for security. It's a liability. Because of the Goncalves family public opposition to the demolition, Eccles is concerned that there might be some sort of disruption when they arrive on campus to pick up Kaylee's belongings in August. I absolutely worried that Shannon Gray was going to get the media there and try to make this a big deal, Eccles later said. But the Goncalves family comes quietly, without Gray and without drama. They take their time looking through Kaylee's things. Eccles feels for them. I felt I had a really good relationship with them for the most part, he said. In person, he senses they are just decent people trying to grieve their loss of their daughter and advocate for her in the best way they know how. By the end of August, all 4 victims' families have gone through the stuff. The Kernodles do it remotely. Steve Goncalves is bracing for the worst, but out of the blue, the university announces that demolition is postponed. This is not entirely due to the pressure from the Goncalves family. It is because of something that will come to frustrate Steve even more than the planned demolition of 1122 King Road. It's because the trial date has been changed. August 18th, 2023. Kohberger is clean-shaven, hair neatly trimmed, and dressed in a white shirt, striped tie, and gray jacket. He enters the courtroom through the side door and takes his seat at the defendant's table, where he and Ann Taylor appear to chat too easily, almost as if they are discussing the weather. Sitting in the gallery, Christy stares at him. She wants him to look at her, make eye contact. Her sister, Tammy Butts, really wants him to look over. Tammy is wearing a black shirt on which is emblazoned in yellow and white lettering, #Justice for Kaylee, Idaho House Bill 186, shots fired. A few months earlier, the Idaho House of Representatives passed a law that would effectively bring back the firing squad as means of execution if the state officials were unable to obtain the chemicals needed to carry out lethal injection. Tammy's t-shirt, a photograph of her wearing it, is later posted to the Goncalves family Facebook page with the caption, "Damn, it feels good to be a gangster," is a reminder that Bill Thompson has put the death penalty on the table. And then he takes it away. If Kohberger sees a t-shirt of the family, he doesn't react. Even when the defense's first expert witness in the hearing talks about the science of investigative genetic genealogy, Kohberger's expression stays fixed. His attorneys will later argue in court papers that this is due to the autism spectrum diagnosis, and they will claim it could hurt a jury's perception of him. The media's poll camera helps zooming in on him as if seeking something, anything, but it gets nothing. In a preview of what may come at trial depending on what the judge allows in, Taylor steers the focus to the DNA found on the knife sheath. She wants the state to hand over to her the precise IgG methodology that was used to construct Kohberger's family tree. Discovery that he states the lawyers say they don't have, and even if they did, they argue the issue is moot because they have Kohberger's DNA from a cheek swab. And it's an exact match for the DNA on the knife sheath. The IgG lab work simply gave them a lead. Judge John C. Judge says he'll allow Taylor to pursue this avenue even though it's on the edge. He expresses his desire to be particularly cautious. This is a death penalty case, and if I deny the presentations that one or the other side believe have some bearing on this case, it's probably more wise for me to allow it, the judge adds. It's especially important in a case like this to have a record for appeal. So I'm not saying one way or the other how my ruling might fall, but I think it's important to preserve the record. For the next 2.5 hours, the courtroom becomes Taylor's theater. At least that's how Steve sees it. Thompson seems to have little to ask or say. Taylor calls 3 expert witnesses and peppers them with questions about the complexity of science behind creating a family tree from the trace DNA. One of them, as far as Steve can see, has no right to call herself an expert at all. How are you allowing her to become an expert on the stand and not even cross-examine her yet? He complains privately afterward. The experts discuss the room for error and also the issue of whether online genetic databases were accessed by law enforcement without authorization, which could lead to legal challenges down the line. When you look at the 2 lawyers battling, it almost doesn't seem like a fair fight. Thompson is retirement age and looks it. Taylor is in her late 50s, young-looking, blonde. She's quick on her feet and she's aggressive. She asks the judge, for instance, to toss out the indictment based on numerous far-fetched sounding irregularities surrounding the grand jury process. She argues that too few jurors were called, 32 instead of 45, in the violation of the state statute, that the instructions they were given were inaccurate. Even the questionnaires they received were misnumbered. A former classmate of hers, Moscow lawyer Mike Patterson, observed that part of Taylor's job was simply to buy Kohberger time. It's a death penalty case. So when the disappointing, if predictable, news that Kohberger is waiving his right to a speedy trial comes down the pike 5 days later on August 23rd, Steve is prepared. It's a reminder, Steve says, that it's essential that the Goncalves family is there in the courtroom for every single hearing. He has so little control over the course of justice that his presence in that room staring at the defendant feels like the only thing powerful he can do. It's the only time he truly sees doing anything proactive for Kaylee and Maddie. November 13th, 2023, Lackawanna, Washington. It's 1-year anniversary of the death of their beloved child. Jim, Stacy, Hunter, and Maisie Chapin, dressed in black tie, are welcoming their guest. Over glasses of wine in early summer, Jim and Stacy thought very hard about what they wanted to do on this day. They wanted the evening to be upbeat, positive, celebratory even. They wanted to raise money for their foundation, Ethan Smile. They wanted to be intimate and private. There are more media requests flooding in than ever, partly because of the anniversary, but also because Stacy's insistence on keeping the focus of Ethan's story away from the lurid end is becoming a focus in itself. In October, the New York Times covered her weekend visit to Orlando, Florida for the Crime Con, which billed itself as the world's #1 event for true crime and mystery. Stacy had gone to the convention as part of the panel's victims' parents, who, like her and Jim, were starting foundation as their children's legacies. Once there, she saw that professor from Alabama was offering a seminar proposing to be forensic analysis of Ethan's murder. Stacy tried to attend but walked outside after a few minutes. After some deliberation, she returned to the packed seminar near the end of the session. She stood up at the mic during the Q&A. "My name is Stacey Chapin, and I'm Ethan's mom," she said. The room of 3,200 people hushed, then broke into loud applause. Her voice quavering with emotion, Stacy pressed on, explaining that she hadn't watched the presentation, but had a message for the room. In their fascination with crime, they should not forget the victims. These were 4 of the greatest kids, and all of the great things you read about them are legitimately true. Don't forget these kids. They were amazing, amazing kids in their prime of their life. The moment goes viral on Fox News. Whether she wants to do this or not, through her steady insistence that people focus on Ethan's life and not his death, Stacy is developing a brand, iconic supermom. But now, on the 1-year anniversary of Ethan's death, she and Jim want a press-free evening. They accept an offer from a friend in La Conner, Jeff Helm, to use Hellman's Vineyard wine shop and a bar for a party. As Stacy warms to the idea, she realizes she doesn't want any party. If they are going to do this, they are really going to do this. This dress code is going to be black tie. She thinks hard about a guest list. Of course, Hunter and Maisie will be there. Of course, they will ask close family friends like Susie DeVry and her cousins Kathleen and Stuart and the PR executives who acted as their gatekeeper, and Melissa and Jeff and all the people who helped him with the foundation. Dean Eccles sends 2 of his team. There are also people who have come to be part of the Chapins' growing family because of the tragedy. One is Xana Kernodle, Xana's big sister, of whom Stacy feels increasingly protective. Jasmine has moved to Seattle with her boyfriend, Pat, but Jeff is in Arizona. But because Jeff is in Arizona, Stacy worries that Jasmine can feel alone at times. Stacy wants to support her. The other person Stacy invites is the Moscow Police Chief, James Fry. Sure that the chief will be able to make it. James Fry. Even as she dresses for the evening in a long navy gown, Stacy isn't sure that the chief will be able to make it. After all, there's an anniversary vigil going down on the UI campus, and La Conner is a 6-hour drive from Moscow. But as everyone sips the fine wines, Chief Fry walks in quietly, his son JD besides him. During her remarks, Stacy asks the room to acknowledge him. "We just cannot thank you enough for the work you have done to right this atrocity, and we can't wait for it to be over so that we can talk about some of what we know and what some of us really know." The chief smiles. The Chapins, like Michelle Weidrich, Joseph's mom, and Chrissy Dove, Sarah Park's sister, are his kind of people. "We all have different personalities. Some of us are always going to take the bad and make some good out of it," he later said. "And then there's people who take the bad and try to capitalize on it. And then there's people who take the bad and let it destroy them. And I think Stacy, the Chapmans, look what they've done. 33 scholarships, over $50,000 given to kids." He added, "After what happened to them, that's extraordinary." Rathdrum, Idaho, November 13th. On the 1-year anniversary of Kaylee's murder, the Goncalves don't go to the vigil in Moscow. Instead, they sit in their living room on their black leather couch, familiar now to America's many true crime sleuths, and give TV interviews about Kaylee and their frustration with the excruciatingly slow and opaque legal path to justice. "We said, gather it up. We'll work with investigators and turn this around," Steve tells News Nation. He repeats how, because nobody knows her like her brother and sister, they were ahead of investigators on the grub truck video and reaching out to Kaylee and Maddie's driver. "We went from being victims and became actively involved, and that could make a difference," Steve says. They could tell their interviewers that they have some proof that their advocacy matters. For one thing, 1122 King Road is still standing, and on October 31st, the FBI re-entered the home to create a new 3D map of the crime scene. Because of the gag order, it is not clear to the public what drove the agency to do this, but it's an undeniable win for the Goncalves family. "I knew in my heart what was the best for those girls and Ethan. I knew what was best way to keep the house around until they did more," Steve tells News Nation's Brian Enton. There will be a point when I'll be like, let it go, but that isn't now." The family shifts focus to another bone of contention, Kohberger's attire for court hearings. Once John Judge took over the case, he granted Ann Taylor's request to allow her client to appear in court unshackled and wearing a suit. "He looks like a business executive," Christy explodes. "According to her research, I've never seen another murder or whatever he is in this point of the case not in handcuffs, not in shackles, one or the other or both, and in orange. The absence of prison clothing is infuriating. It makes me sick that he sits there in the suit and he sits there and taps his hands, and she tells Enton. He rocks back and forth. Why is he sitting there in the judge chair with a fresh haircut? Bill Thompson explains to the family via Gray that the judge allowed this out of caution. If the defense argues successfully that Kohberger has been made to look guilty on TV screens around the world before he appears in front of the jury, it could be grounds for an appeal. But Steve assumes that with a case that's this high profile, there will be an appeal regardless. Steve knows there's a good chance that Ann Taylor will argue due to the constant local media coverage of the case, that Kohberger will not be able to get an impartial jury in Moscow and the trial should be moved. If it is moved, Boise, nearly 300 miles away, would most likely be the venue. How is that fair to the victims' families? It just seems wrong, he says, that an outsider comes here, does crime here, without the community having a voice and determining how the justice plays out. That's why Steve chooses to be proactive. I want BK to look back and say, if there was one thing that really brought me down, it was messing with Kaylee's family. They wouldn't let up, Steve said. I would never want him to get away with it. He's toying with the idea of pursuing a federal case based on Kohberger having crossed so many state lines to commit the murders. Sources at the FBI have told him that this might be a possibility. Steve knows that's a long shot, but he's going to explore every avenue. For the Goncalves family, nothing is off the table. Our motto was, don't be victims. Don't ever be a victim. After this chapter, I'm seeing how Steve feels now. Like, I think, my heart breaks for him. I think healing is going to take a very long time, and he didn't get what he wanted out of justice for this. And I can't imagine living with that. You know what I mean? Regardless of the good things that do happen in his life, I feel like that's rough. That's really rough. December 28th, 2023. Demolition Day is here, finally, despite the Goncalves' best efforts. Last night, Shannon Gray released a statement from the Goncalves family with the headline, "Please stop the demolition of King Road home. We feel that the University of Idaho and the court has put us in a horrible position to have our voice our opinions." The statement read, We all along have just wanted the King Road home to not be demolished until after the trial, and for us to have a trial date so that we can look forward to justice being served. Is that really too much to ask? The Chapins have not commented, nor has Ben Mogen, but Christy and Steve are not ready to so easily say goodbye to the last place Kaylee had been on this earth. Behind the scenes, Olivia, who is back in California and due to give birth to her fourth child shortly, has been trying to get her parents to back down and let it go. This is not the hill you want to die on, she's told them. We have other more important battles. On the other hand, Alina Smith, the co-founder of the University of Idaho Case Discussion Facebook page, goes to great effort to join the protest. She's flown from Texas, arriving at 1122 King Road long before dawn, but she cannot get close to the house. There's police tape everywhere. They had it so blocked off over there that nobody could get through, she said. And other than the media, there's no one around, not even protesters. They put warnings out a good week or so ahead of time on these little billboards everywhere that if you think you're going to show up and protest, we're going to arrest you on the spot, she said. They scared everybody away. The demolition is scheduled for 7 a.m., but the crew starts 2 hours early. By the time the sun is up, the house is in pieces on the ground. Christine, the other co-founder of the Facebook page, is back in Rochester, New York, which she is annoyed that she can't fly to Moscow to watch and take a video of the demolition with Alina, but she's got her family to deal with over the holidays. Earlier in the month, the university stated for the third time that it planned to knock the house down on December 29th while the students were home for the holidays. UI President Scott Green told the Idaho Statesman, "While we appreciate the emotional connection some family members of the victims may have to this house, it is time for its removal and to allow the collective healing of our community to continue." That quote really stung, Olivia said. Green's stance raised the demolition debate to a fever pitch. Members of the Facebook page are split, some for and some against. Sympathizers with students who are distressed by the sight of the house debate whose favor preserving the premises for potential use in the trial. In the recent trial of South Carolina lawyer Alex Murdaugh, the jury visited the family plantation where Murdaugh's wife and son had been found murdered. On December 20th, Christine and Alina did Alina did a TV summit with News Nation's Ashley Banfield to talk about the controversy around the demolition. And when Alina gets to Moscow, she tells Christine that the trip is proving to be good PR for the page. She's done a bunch of press. She's met fellow cyber sleuth Olivia Vitelli, the creator of Chronicles of Olivia on TikTok. Olivia was a person to whom the Goncalves family gave their first in-depth interview to a year earlier. Alina tells Christine, I think we have an opportunity with her. She's like, she didn't know half the stuff that you and I know. She's so interested in us. Christine is excited to learn this because she thinks that with all the work she and Alina have put into launching their podcast series, they're nearly ready. On December 8th, she posted on the Facebook page a photograph of Alina and captioned her, your lovely administrators want to let you know our first podcast is in the works. Enjoy your weekend, but don't cause Alina and I to drink too much. By now, Christine has refined their podcast concept, 2 sleuths, 1 crime. Alina, however, returns to Texas to bad news. Her husband has lost his job of 20 years. Something is going to have to change, she thinks. Unlike Christine, Alina doesn't have a paying job. Running the Facebook page and 9 others like it has been all time consuming for her, but she's got 3 kids with one with a disability, and she needs to carry her family while her husband gets back on his feet. So she'll look for the right opportunity. Christine, she's sure, will understand. February 28th, Moscow. Thank you, Spooks. Good to see you. Steve is praying, and Laura, and hello. Steve is praying as he takes his seat in the gallery of the courthouse. Let's get a date. Let's get a date. To the Goncalves family, attempting to set the trial date is beginning to feel like Groundhog Day. And Taylor seems to be winning every tactical battle. Each time she presents a consistent visual, Kohberger sits up at the front, suited and stone-faced, next to Taylor and her colleague, Alyssa Massouf, sorry if that's wrong, as the defense attorney debates what evidence might and not be admissible at trial. Each time, Taylor is the star of the show. She's on her feet, talking and raising questions more often than any other lawyer in the room. Thompson barely says anything, and the judge, as far as Steve can see, bends over backward to accommodate Taylor. Ooh, shade. Last month, Steve, Christy, and Shannon finally hold an in-person meeting with Bill Thompson and his team. They vented their frustrations about the lack of progress. We beat up on Thompson a little bit, Steve said. On Friday, the judge asked, what can I do to make sure that we get this case done before 2025? What would I have to do? And Thompson said, you got to start setting dates. At the end of the court, what did he do? He didn't set a date. And we're like, that's your fault, Thompson. Today, after yet another back and forth about how much of the IGG discovery the defense wants, Taylor asked the judge to allow 3 unnamed criminal investigators working for the defense to access the material. The meat of the session, finally, is a heated argument about trial date. Steve is hopeful at the outset of the dialogue. John, Judge, and Thompson want to set it for March 3rd, 2025, but Taylor pushes back, managing to sound simultaneously calm and exasperated. Death is different, Taylor says. The words punch Olivia Gonzalez in the gut. Taylor continues, this is a capital case. I've heard the court says the court only wants to do it once, and I've heard the court ask what I can do to speed things up. She pauses. I need discovery. I need all of the discovery. When I ask for something, I need to get it rather than to have to go back and ask again. And I'm not trying to be mean about Bill Thompson, she says, looking directly at her former boss. I'm just not. I think he tries his very best. She blames the problem on agencies like the FBI, who she says hand things over piecemeal. It's like if you wanted to play 52 card pickup with 100,000 decks of cards and throw them in the air, and I have to figure out how to put them together. She wins the hour. No trial date is set. The judge adjourns with a further hearing scheduled for May to discuss venue change. Steve can barely believe it. So here we are stuck in the situation, and we have a judge and a prosecution that's supposed to be defending us, acting like the biggest victim, and just keeps making us feel like a victim over and over. Every time we go into the courtroom, he just sits there and just lets her hit him and lets her dictate everything that's going to happen. It's so frustrating. Steve feels he has got to do something, anything, to change the momentum. He's going to keep doing his own digging. If no one else can get a break in this case, he will. The discovery hasn't closed. If we do find something that they don't have, then they're going to have to put it in the case. And I don't care. If they don't like the fact that somebody else found it, it isn't the part of Idaho. I don't know what kind of world we live in and where we hide the truth. May 3rd. When it comes to saying goodbye to the police department, he has served 31 years. Chief Fry knows better than to try to get through it live. Instead, he sits near the front of the audience in the conference room of Moscow's Best Western Hotel next to Julie and his kids, while the assembled guests watch him give the farewell speech he recorded on a video a week earlier. The raw, emotional, authentic performance would not be highly rated by his former press coach, Aaron Snell, and it's all the better for that. The chief's voice cracks and he stumbles over his word as he runs through the very long list of people to thank. To everyone who worked the Idaho Four homicides, Idaho State Patrol, FBI, Moscow officers, Latah County officers, and Idaho's Attorney General Office, you are all unsung heroes who did and continue to do a great job because of how you did your job. You have brought trust and respect to the law enforcement community, to the Moscow police personnel. You are truly top-notch. He runs through his list. Bill Thompson, colleagues, patrol corporals, and sergeants, command, his family, his kids, his son-in-law. And then finally, he gets to Julie. God knew I needed a strong wife, he says, tears welling at the thought of the woman who kept his whiskey levels in check during the winter of 2022 and who has always been there for him. He and Julie recently took the Berkman personality test, and James wasn't shocked to discover the colors of the personality were red for action and energy, green for communication, and blue for creativity, and that Julie's was yellow for order. She completes me, he says. Everyone in the room knows that this isn't farewell to James Fry so much as a see you later. Before he retired, the chief announced publicly that he would run for sheriff in November of 2024. He'll be up against Reggie Skiles, the incumbent, which is somewhat awkward because they know each other well. This is Moscow after all, and both men are well liked, but if he doesn't win, he'll find something to keep him in the mix. Even so, the retirement of James Fry makes the end of an era, one in which the Moscow PD faced the most high profile, and arguably the most horrific challenge in its history. The house at 1122 King Road may be demolished, but the people in this room bear scars that will last forever, long after Bryan Kohberger has finally faced justice, whenever and wherever that happens. Exhibit A is Tyson Barrett, who is at the Chiefs' retirement party. He has already told the Chief he'll be having one of his own in July. Tyson is only 52, but the stress of the demands placed him on during the winter of 2022 has taken his toll. He's done. Fry later said he regretted making Tyson the point person for all four victims' family. It was too heavy of a burden for one man to bear in those ghastly 6 weeks between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve 2022. I should have split it up, he said. There's barely a dry eye in the room at the end of the ceremony when Anthony Dellinger hands James Fry his police radio to sign off for the last time. When the dispatcher utters the words, 101 is off duty for the final time, the room is silent. Heavy, says Dellinger, the new chief in conclusion. Definitely a little heavy. Wow, so officers stepped down and retired, etc. after this case. That's terrible. Prosper, Texas, May 20th, 2024. After breakfast, Alina goes to her bedroom to check her phone before taking her house guest, a member of the Facebook page, and the woman's 7-year-old son to the airport. She's away for about 15 minutes. When Alina returns, she's clearly distressed. Her house guests observe that Alina's face is unrecognizable from all the tears. What's happened in those 15 minutes is an argument over text messages with Christine. She has culminated in all of the work Alina has done. On all 10 of the Facebook pages she created and administered with her oldest friend being eradicated. It's devastating. Alina is hardly in a fit state to drive, so her house guests take an Uber to the airport. When she's alone, Alina returns to her bed and stays there for the next 3 days. The fight between the two Facebook page founders began when Christine texted Alina to ask if she was promoting a new case discussion piece about the recent controversial suicide of a Myrtle Beach woman, Micah Miller, whose husband was a pastor of a local church. Alina replied that she was. Christine responded that she couldn't believe Alina had started something without her. Alina explained that she had joined a crime scene collective as part of a victims advocacy foundation because she believed it would result in paid work, which she desperately needed. Christine, she thought, would understand. Alina had financial pressures, and Christine was so busy with her day job that Alina wanted to forge ahead on this. She was worried that the podcast project might never happen. But Christine did not understand. After a rapid-fire exchange of escalating, angry, explicit texts, Christine deleted Alina from every single page they shared together. Just like that, the childhood friends were done, over, but so too was everything Alina had worked for years and years. And almost immediately, their dispute became public. Christine posted the Facebook page her side of the story of Alina's betrayal. The post garnered 28,000 views and almost 500 comments. Not all of them were positive. What does this have to do, some members asked, with the tragic murder of the 4 young innocents in Idaho? Olivia Gonzalez was one of those members. She messaged Christine that she felt she'd written on the page was inappropriate. Olivia felt very sorry for Alina. She knew firsthand how hard Alina worked. Olivia could see how consistently and often Alina had intervened on the page to squash some of the more outlandish conspiracy theories and victim blaming. Fearing that the page might be deleted suddenly in the midst of the fracas, Olivia joined another smaller page at the University of Idaho murders case discussion as a backup. A couple days later, Alina became its administrator. It's not the outcome Alina had imagined when she and Christine started their page, and it took off so quickly. And now it's not what Christine wanted either. The old page no longer accomplishes what it did at the height of the investigation. Despite the building anticipation around the upcoming trial, there's less media interest in the Facebook page than there used to be. Neither Alina nor Christine is invited to go to News Nation much anymore. Privately, both of them regret that the page's focus turned away from the victims and towards their messy personal affairs. But it's too late to mend fences. Moscow, Idaho, May 30th. Yet again, Steve thinks this hearing is a complete waste of everyone's times. Today, Ann Taylor kicks things off by interrogating Brett Payne about the surveillance video canvassing for the white Hyundai Elantra. She asks him to take her back in time to December 23rd, 2022, when he received Kohberger's phone records for 48 hours around the murders, then issued a warrant for the 6 months prior to it. Payne patiently explains that he deferred the FBI expert, Special Agent Nick Balance, to analyze the phone records, and that PCA, no surprise, was put together based on the input from the experts at command. It's clear from the matter-of-fact way Payne answers Taylor's question that he's describing the workings of a well-oiled investigation. All the different teams and experts do what they do individually, then click together. But Taylor is looking to exploit any gaps in the machinery. She homes in on the fact that the investigators didn't create a central inventory for thousands of hours of video surveillance. Rather, it's stored on different number of drives. And because he was focused only on the video that was relevant for the PCA, the video with the Elantra in it, Payne doesn't know where all of it is. What? Taylor wants the video they have of I-95, the main route back to Pullman, because of the Elantra doesn't appear in it. In Payne's probable cause affidavit, he was careful not to specify which route Kohberger took from Moscow to Pullman. Steve can see that the defense attorney is looking for any sort of hole. It's an absurdly low bar, he thinks. Worse, though, the technique plants seed of doubt. Taylor is poisoning the audience by saying that there's no connection, that there's no video, Steve said. So when she starts doing that shit, I start getting impatient with Thompson and saying, she's kicking your ass in there and you need to stand up for us. Thompson is trying to push back. He's told the judge the characterization that we are consciously withholding information to the defense is utter nonsense. Indeed, at this point, Taylor concedes the state has given the defense a 50 terabyte hard drive, more than 13,000 photographs, more than 15,000 video clips from businesses, and more than 8,000 video clips from residences. But Steve doesn't think Thompson is doing enough to manage public perception. He's upset with how Thompson questioned one of the defense's experts on April 10th. You acknowledge falsely that Mr. Kohberger allegedly stalked one of the victims. That's false. You know that to be false, Thompson said. The defense expert confirmed that the information was false. Steve is totally confused. Maybe Thompson is being strategic, or maybe stalking has some legal definition that Steve isn't aware of. But as far as he knows, and Steve knows a lot at this point, Kohberger for sure looked into the King Roadhouse several minutes before the night of November 13th. Steve has gotten hold of the video of a car idling outside for 15 minutes. He isn't positive, but it looks similar to Kohberger's. I said this yesterday. I believe he was stalking them. Like, he was on their social medias. He was showing up to campus. I don't believe that I think he was for sure. Hey, Witch, good to see you. He's fairly certain from his own research that Kohberger showed up at the UI cafeteria and that he was looking up restaurants with vegan options in the area. There's only one, the Mad Greek, where Maddie and Xana worked. So how can Thompson say there was no stalking? Maybe there's some rule around the term stalking. Steve reasons where you have to physically communicate. I don't know, but I do believe that these victims were selected. I think he picked them and he monitored them. He studied them. He hunted them. And every father and mother's understanding is that he stalked them. I agree with that. I do agree with Steve Goncalves. Meanwhile, in court, he's got to sit through more mind-numbingly technical testimony from Cy Wright, a cell phone geolocation data analyst, who says essentially there's stuff missing from the record, and the missing data, about 2 to 3% of the location data from Kohberger's phone, could be important. Steve figures he knows a heck of a lot more about the cell phone data than this guy. What they should be getting into, Steve thinks, is a trial date and Kohberger's alibi. In April, Taylor filed papers saying that Kohberger would use an alibi defense. She wrote that Kohberger was out driving in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, as he often did, to hike and run and or see the moon and stars. He drove throughout the area south of Pullman, Washington, west of Moscow, Idaho, including 𝐍𝐸 Park. What kind of half-baked alibi is that? Steve says. I mean, stargazing? Give me a break. I agree with that as well. Why doesn't Thompson try to get it thrown out as evidence? Steve doesn't get it, not least because on the night of the murders, he discovered there was very little visibility. The hearing ends with the state getting nowhere as far as he can see. The afternoon session to talk further about the IGG is closed. Steve hears through the grapevine that during the closed sessions, the judge reams out Taylor. He would have liked to see that. For the moment, he and Christy use the only leverage they have, the media, and they issued this statement. Wasn't this hearing supposed to address a motion to compel discovery? How did it evolve into an attack on the probable cause affidavit? The prosecution's witnesses, training records, and their evidence-gathering techniques? The court needs to take control of the case and the attorneys involved. As long as the court continues to entertain anything and everything at every hearing, the delay will never end. Priest Lake, Idaho, June 2024. We're just about done, guys, with the whole book. It's wild. It's a beautiful day when Stacy Chapin gets the call from Bill Thompson's office. Next week, there's a hearing at which finally, the judge will set a trial date. It will likely be summer 2025. How sad. We know clearly that never happened. Thompson would like for it to happen when there are no students around. He's pointed out to the judge that the high school is opposite the courthouse. The news is something of relief to Stacy. The first hint that maybe some sort of an end can be in sight. Although by now, she knows better than to count her chickens. You have to be in for the long haul, a prosecutor friend of theirs told her. You have to let the defense put up everything. And Stacy has been warned that it's possible the trial will not happen in Moscow, despite the best efforts of the prosecutors. The defense will continue arguing that the community is too small and too prejudiced to provide Kohberger with an impartial jury. But where will they go when the trial takes place? Stacy starts to wonder. Will they stay at Priest Lake? Part of her wants to leave the country for 3 months. She knows the press coverage will be intense, and that means reliving the horrors of November 13th. But after months of agonizing, she, Jim, and Maisie and Hunter decide they do want to be there to represent Ethan, especially at the opening where the jury first convenes. They also want to be in the courtroom to support Hunter Johnson and Emily and all of Ethan and Xana's other friends who will likely have to testify. It will be a necessary but sorry interruption from the new normal that's finally emerging. Both Chapin kids are now so busy during the semester that their parents no longer feel they need to visit Moscow every other weekend. Hunter and Maisie are set to graduate in May of 2025. This summer, Jim is training Hunter to work with him in the machinery construction business, and Hunter also got his EMT certification. Maisie has been working as a server at Hills Resort. After college, she's considering either training as a professional chef or studying nursing. Public speaking, Stacy is finding, is a positive thing for her to do, provided it's an appropriate forum that focuses not on the salacious aspects of the murder, but on the family values that are Stacy's strong suit. She loves to talk about Ethan, but she's also beginning to realize there's an appetite out there for the positivity that she and Jim are trying to create to remember him by. In April, Stacy flew to LA to record the episode of The Squeeze, the mental wellness podcast hosted by Taylor Lautner, who starred in the Twilight movies, and his wife Taylor Dome. When Lautner asked her what she felt about Kohberger's trial and the path to justice, Stacy said, "One of the greatest messages I feel that we've all done in handling this situation. Nothing changes the outcome. We cannot bring Ethan back. So you could spend a lot of time there, or you can just realize that and figure out how to move forward." And the Chapmans are moving forward. They like to walk around the lake and sit on the wooden bench engraved with their late son's name. Ethan would be very proud, Stacy often says to Jim when they look out the water and his beloved volleyball court at Hills Resort. They like to come to this bench and sip mimosas as they watch the sun sink behind the mountains. Even better is when Hunter and Maisie are around on weekends. Their entire family can all look at the lake and talk about Ethan and what was probably his favorite spot in the world. They can find peace even. The funny thing is, Ethan would be like, "Well, of course my parents knocked it out of the park. That's how we roll as a family." Stacy says to her husband, who nods in agreement, "We had a motto, go big or go home, and that's what we've done." Post-Fall, Idaho, June 15th. The black tie crowd at the inaugural Make It Pink Gala is so large, it's hard to see everyone who's turned out to support the new Made with Kindness nonprofit that's been set up in honor of Maddie and Kaylee by Maddie's sorority friend, Ashlyn Couch. There's a hiccup at the check-in desk. For the people in formal dress who are in line that goes past the bathrooms and around the corner all the way to the elevators is a good 30-minute wait. No one minds. They are here for a good cause. They can buy the merchandise laid out on the table while they wait. Tonight even, people are there to support the Goncalveses and Laramies. The Goncalves family, seated around two tables, is in the middle of the room. Mostly keep to themselves. They lent Kaylee's name to the nonprofit, but because they only know a handful of people there, one might miss them in the crush. When the MC motions Kaylee and Maddie, Christy puts her hand in her head and weeps. Steve puts his arm around her. It's a bittersweet moment. Christy and the girls have been looking forward to this. It's an excuse, Steve says, for them to get their hair and nails done and for him to put on a black tie. And it's wonderful that there's now a scholarship in Kaylee and Maddie's name. During the event, it's announced that Xana's name will complete the trifecta, but they still haven't gotten justice for their daughter. That night, Steve says he heard the good news from Thompson that there's likely to be a court date set, finally, but his patience with Ann Taylor is as thin as ever. He particularly objects to one line she repeatedly uses in court. "Judge, if we ever get to trial, ... If she doesn't want to get to trial, Steve says, well, Bill Thompson needs to press the judge and find a defense attorney who does want to. Steve is still pursuing his parallel investigation. He's seeking answers to a million questions about Kohberger's connection to the King Road house. For instance, he says he'd like to know more about what Dylan saw that night. He feels certain he doesn't know everything about what she witnessed. Someone told him that she hid in a closet. Maybe she phoned someone. He's heard there's evidence on her phone that's important." Is that true? We haven't read that in the court documents, but I don't remember that from the ones we have read. Steve is pissed that 1122 King Road was demolished by the university when, as he puts it, 75% of the parents were against it. See what I mean? Like, that was shady. When the time is right, he'll be ready to look at the options for civil cases. He's on a roll. I hope he's doing that right now. Suddenly, Christy prods her husband. "Is that Blaine Eccles?" she says, shocked, looking across the room. "It can't be," Steve says. Post Falls is a 90-minute drive from Moscow. Blaine Eccles didn't tell the Goncalveses or Laramie families he was coming. And yes, it is Blaine Eccles sitting with a bunch of random strangers. "I was a little curious to see how my presence would be perceived," the dean later said. The Goncalves family is stunned, given the back and forth over the King Road house demolition. Christy and Olivia leap up and go say hello to him, and then they bring Eccles to their table. Steve and Eccles shake hands. Eccles tells them that the university's Healing Garden, a project he spearheaded, has overseen to commemorate the victims and help the community grieve, is nearly done. It's likely to open in August as the start of the fall semester. Of course, he wants the family there. While Eccles leaves, readying for his 90-minute drive back to Moscow, Steve Goncalves actually smiles. It's Father's Day weekend, and Eccles bothered to come. In spite of himself and the fights, Steve is touched. "Classy," he says. Brodheadsville, Pennsylvania, summer 2024. As Connie Saba is shopping at the Rite Aid in Brodheadsville, she sees someone in the pain relief aisle who looks familiar. She stops. is someone she used to work with, and then she realizes it's Michael Kohberger, Bryan's dad. Connie, he says, is that you? How are you, Michael? She replies. He seems very pleased to talk to someone. My heart goes out to Marianne, Connie says. How is she? Michael tells her that his wife doesn't talk to anyone, even on the phone. We lead a very quiet life, he says. We don't go out. And even when they are at home, he says they don't feel safe. People, he tells her, are watching our house. That is freaky. What people? Government people, he says, leaving her slightly confused. Then he says, you know Bryan didn't do it, right, Connie? What? Connie thinks. Sorry, I was like choking. She says, the Bryan I know wouldn't do it. She wants to be supportive. It's then that Michael seems to remember that he hasn't spoke to her since Jeremy died. We were both shocked to hear Jeremy died, he tells her. Marianne wanted to call you, but she felt unable to. He doesn't explain why. Does Bryan know Jeremy died? Bryan was away, Michael says. He doesn't say where. We didn't tell him for months, but yes, he knows. Bryan wasn't the same after the drugs, he adds. He wasn't the same person. Connie nods, but she thinks even on drugs, Jeremy had remained sweet and good-natured. But Bryan was framed, Michael says. Connie is startled. Framed? Someone planted the knife sheath, he tells her. The police didn't find it when they first went in. There was a lot of drugs in the house, a lot of people around, but they only looked at Bryan. You know how he likes to drive around when he's nervous. That's interesting. There was a lot of drugs in the house. I know we heard a little bit of that in one of the documents. Or was that this book? What was around? I would like to know if that's true and what it was. Connie doesn't, but Michael tells her. He always used to get in the car and drive at night when he needed to think or he had some fog. He had to get away and just think, or when he couldn't sleep, he would just drive around. Michael adds, things will come out in the trial. Everyone will see. The two go down memory lane, reminiscing about Jeremy's and Bryan's childhood, the two boys running back and forth between their respective houses. Connie asks after Michael's daughter, Amanda and Melissa. She's read news report that Melissa was fired from her job, but she doesn't ask specifically about that. Michael says they are good. They chat in the aisle for at least an hour. Michael seems almost sorry to leave. She can tell he doesn't get to blow off much steam. That night, she phones her daughter, Bridget, to go over the whole extraordinary conversation. Connie feels for Michael Kohberger. He clearly believes his son is innocent. She isn't sure if he's in denial or not, but she can empathize with how a parent must feel in a situation like this, given everything the Kohbergers try to do for Bryan. If it was my child, she later said, I'd probably be the same way. I also think Michael Kohberger got a call from Bryan multiple times, and he knew what was up. Don't come for me. August 21st, 2024. It's blistering hot, but the Sig Kai brothers wear their suits nonetheless. They want to honor Ethan. Stacey Chapin hugs each of them as they file into the new Vandal Healing Garden and Memorial for the dedication ceremony. She'd asked Blaine Eccles earlier if the guys could sit close to the Chapins. It's the first time since the tragedy of November 13th that representatives of all four victims' families are together in Moscow. The Goncalveses sit at the front to the left facing the podium. Ben Mogen is behind them. The Chapins and the Kernodles, represented by Jasmine Kernodle and a couple of Xana's aunts, sit to the right. James Fry stands at the back, almost unrecognizable in his jeans. Mayor Beggett is there. So are Moscow PD. They are standing guard. There are still some true crime maniacs around who are unhealthily obsessed with the King Road murders. Occasionally they surface on campus. And though few people talk about it, everyone is aware that sitting in a basement cell less than a mile away is a suspected murderer. For Steve and Christy, he's front of mind. The hearing to decide the change of venue is only 3 days away. Christy posted on her Facebook page, all I can think about is the change of venue hearing this Thursday. I'm just sick about it. I wish I could snap my fingers and it would be over. The anticipation eats me alive. Please pray for us. Today, though, the Goncalves family is not on defense. In fact, they are fully supportive of Dean Eccles and the university. Christy even wears a t-shirt emblazoned with Vandal Strong. Steve Goncalves chats amicably with Chief Fry. He shakes Jim Chapin's hand. Dean Eccles hands him a folder of Kaylee's work. Steve and Crystal do several interviews with local media. They say that yes, it's hard to be here, but they are glad to honor their daughter. They think the healing garden is a wonderful idea. Dean Eccles comes up with the concept of the garden after the vigil. He knew that the university needed to memorialize of Idaho Four, and while they were at it, he thought, why not create a space to remember all the UI students who passed away too soon while attending college? There have been four students' deaths since November 2022, so the dean invited everyone to discuss where the space might go and what it could look like. More than 100 students, among them Hunter Chapin and the faculty members, came. Eccles created a garden committee that included not just landscape architects, but representative of the victims' fraternities and sororities, one from Phi, one from Sig Chi, and two from Phi Phi. Dr. Sean Corey, the Dean of UI's College of Art and Architecture, developed a class focus on the creation of a template. They identified plants that work with our temperature, our climate, time of year. They measure how dark it gets and on what days of the year. They have done so much work, Dean Eccles said with pride. Earlier in the spring of 2023, the four families were invited to sit in on the class and give their input. Stacy felt that it was one of the most cathartic experiences she and Jim had since Ethan's death. The kids didn't ask them specific questions about garden design. They asked general questions, thoughtful questions like, what does it mean to be a vandal, and what are the words that describe Ethan? Even the mother hen, Stacy, felt a bond forming with these young kids, and she thrilled to recognize many of them wearing matching black shirts on this big day. Emily Alant can't get to the ceremony today. The drive from Boise is too long, and Hunter Johnson is at work. But she was asked to pick a flower for Xana. She suggested a Peruvian lily because the lily is Xana's birth flower, and the Peruvian lily, Emily thinks, has the same sort of sparkle and spirituality as her late friend. The Goncalves family will post on Facebook that they found it deeply emotional, special day. They have buried the hatchet with the university for now. It's hard to say which part of it is the most moving. Maybe it is a movement of silence for Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee, or maybe it was when 𝐭𝐥𝐥𝐲-𝐕𝐞𝐫𝐬𝐞, Ethan's friend and fraternity brother, speaks about each of the four victims, concisely describing their distinct personalities in one way no one will easily forget. Do more of what you love to honor Kaylee. Spread that love with random acts of kindness for Maddie. Be silly and do something spontaneous and fun to honor Xana, and tell stories with an abundance of laughter to live life like Ethan. August 29th, 2024. The hearing decided to change venue. Venue last over 6 hours. Steve is not hopeful that the trial will stay in Moscow, despite his best efforts to convey his feelings to the judge via Bill Thompson. The expert witnesses that Ann Taylor produces, who testified that it would be impossible in tiny Moscow to find a fair and impartial jury, seem to speak out on both sides of their mouths. Steve thinks. One expert says you can call the jury and they can remain impartial, and another expert says you hear something and you can never get it out of your head, Steve said afterward. But he's gotten to the impression for months now that Bill Thompson doesn't really want to run the risk of having a trial in Moscow because of the university. The problem, Steve thinks, is that some of these people seem to put the university first ahead of the victims. They all went there. Thompson said in court it would be better to avoid having a trial when students are around. That's why he wants to have it in the summer. Steve was not pleased when he heard that. I mean, that's kind of a weird way to present four murders to a judge, he said. He's also worried that the university's timetable will give Ann Taylor some excuse to push the trial back beyond summer. Even so, he feels that it should be local, and it will be one heck of an inconvenience for him and Christy if it gets moved all the way to Boise. He also figures it might not all be bad to get out of the cozy cabal that is Moscow. He'd welcome a new judge. Today, Judge John C. Judge typically punts making a decision at the hearing itself. He thanks both sides for their really solid arguments. I would say that professionally, this is the most difficult decision I've ever had to make, he adds. On September 6th, in the form of a written decision, the bad news arrives. Well, look at that. They seem to get everything, written decisions, like the night before. The judge writes that the defense has met the rather low standard of basis to move venues. It isn't just that the media storm might have swayed jurors. there are the practical considerations of a tiny courthouse and staff. The Goncalveses post their reaction on the Facebook page. The family is incredibly disappointed in the judge's ruling granting the change of venue. The only good thing about this decision is it will be judge's last decision in this case. It isn't clear for a few days where the trial will be moved, but on September 12th, the Idaho Supreme Court orders its move to Boise, Ada County, under the jurisdiction of a new judge, Stephen Hippler. Steve says that Judge Hippler is no stranger to capital cases. He's known to be strict and stern. Good. You guys were like at the last chapter. Thank you for being here. September 5th, 2022. Bryan Kohberger is flown 300 miles south to Boise and booked in the Ada County Jail. There is inevitable fanfare around his trip. Mike Patterson considers this to be almost a little weight off the minds of people in Moscow. Many of them might have wanted the trial held locally for emotional reasons, but no one liked the idea of Kohberger sitting underground virtually beneath them. It emerges that his exit is barely a day too soon. On October 3rd, it's reported that ����𝐸𝐞𝐥𝐥𝐲 County Jail might finally be closed because it does not meet code regulations. A new fire marshal has arrived in town, looked over the facility, and said that the fire sprinklers and electrical systems don't meet standards and the doors are too small. Even Ellis covers the story. He reports that rebuilding the jail could cost up to $14 million minus the cost of the land. If city commissioners decide it's too expensive, Moscow's criminals might need to be housed in Lewiston instead, and the move could happen in just 2 weeks. Thank the Lord Kohberger is not there, Evan says, imagining the stink that would have been. Being the cynical journalist that he is, he considers the timing. The election for sheriff is barely a month away and thinks it might be ferocious for James Frye's campaign because the jail's failure to meet code regulations happened on his opponent's watch. Is the new fire marshal a Frye guy and trying to help him out, or just a by-the-book guy and just coincidence? Evan asks. I have no idea, he says with a laugh. Hey, MJB. I hope so, Laura. She says, do you think, guys, eventually someone will get their hands on him in jail? September 28th, 2024. Olivia and Christy feel like they've hit a wall. They're going to need housing in Boise for 3 months, but they learn that there's no federal, state, or local assistance for families who have lost a loved one. The only option they realize, with input from Jack DeCourt aunts, Brooke Miller, is to start a Goncalves family GoFundMe page. The family asked initially for $50,000 to house them for 3 months. They will need to be in Boise the next summer for the trial. They explain there will be 10 of them, as well as pets for the long haul. They need the basics: money for housing, food, travel, and compensation for lost work. Money pours in, but the trial date remains uncertain. In the first hearing in Boise, Judge Hippler says he's leaning away from the June date set by the previous judge because he thinks it will be hard to pick a jury given the family vacation schedules. Thompson suggests May. Taylor suggests September. Taylor hits her usual theme of being overloaded with discovery. She's received an additional 398 gigabytes of information since August, she says, and I can tell the court that nobody on the team has read every bit of it yet. But she's also new mitigation expert. She needs to bring up to speed because the person replaced someone who passed away. But in a sign, perhaps, that Judge Hippler has less appetite for delay than John Judge, he tells her she needs to get it done by the deadline he sets. There are 24 hours in a day, but if you use enough of those hours, enough days in a row, you've got to get it done if you have to. The judge delivers a stern lecture to both teams at the outset. I'd like to say I'm happy to be here, but why start with the untruth? He adds, I do expect, and this will all come as no surprise to you, for you to all get along. I understand the stakes in this case are high as they can possibly be in any case, but you are professionals. You have taken oaths both as officers within your jurisdictions, but also as attorneys before this bar. So I expect at all times for you to remain civil to one another, that you not engage in personal attacks, ad hominem attacks, and that you not engage in theatrics, not misstate the facts or the law to the court, and that when you cite arguments and you brief, if there is a contradictory precedent, I expect to see that. On October 9th, Judge Hippler issues his ruling. The trial will start on August 11th and run through November 7th. The Goncalves family finally feels optimistic. The atmosphere in Judge Hippler's courtroom is palpably fresh, electric even. Once they get to trial, Steve hopes events will be anticlimactic. He reasons to be hopeful. Steve's FBI sources have told him that when the agency is involved in a capital murder case, they secure a conviction over 93% of the time. The odds, therefore, of getting a conviction in a quadruple homicide, well, you do the math, he says. A lawyer for the FBI has told Steve that in all his years of experience, he's never seen a case where DNA has been found at the crime scene and it didn't lead to that conviction. A piece of evidence like that is insurmountable. Kathy Mabut, the coroner, and the other investigators agree, but there's one person in Moscow who is worried. Mike Patterson, the Moscow lawyer and Ann Taylor's old classmate, isn't so confident. Ann's a sharp litigator, he says. He wouldn't want to bet against her. Mike hopes he's wrong, but if it's just a knife sheath that happens to have Kohberger's DNA on it, what does that mean? He asks, is the DNA by itself enough proof? Taylor will argue that it isn't. She will also likely challenge the process upon which investigators come about his DNA, Mike believes. She may even offer alternative theories or suggest that somebody, perhaps a crooked police officer, could have planted it. So now the stage is set for a drama that will begin in August, the moment when Emily Hunter Johnson, Bethany Dillon, Ava, and Jack DeCour, Adam, and so many others in the victim circle will likely have to take their positions in the witness box and relive the horrific events of November 13th. As to whether Bryan Kohberger will be found guilty or be acquitted, that's a story for another time. Epilogue. We're done. The orange no trespassing sign is the only indication that something terrible happened here. The patch of land where 1122 King Road once stood is now strangely peaceful. Green shoots spring out of the earth. Birds sing. Students come and go from the houses and dorms all around, but no one stops to gawk anymore. There's nothing to see, just a small field that's overrun with weeds. Most of the students now on campus are of a different, younger generation. They have no memory of Ethan, Xana, Maddie, or Kaylee. They have no memory of the parties, the laughter, and the life that once blazed here. They have no memory of the deck where the inhabitants drank coffee and posed for Instagram photos. But a stone's throw away, the four plaques in the healing garden ensure that no member of the Vandal family, past, present, or future, will forget the names of the four innocents who lived on this piece of green happily and hopefully. Their names are Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee. The end. Oh no, I'm sad. That is crazy. That's crazy. And now fast forward to no trial, plea hearing, and Bryan gets to eat all the honey buns in the freaking world. I'm really upset about that. I think the book was really well written, and I think it was very interesting. I might reread it over as I go through the documents and we go through the documentaries that are coming out. I'm really eager to get through the rest of the documents, but I want to add my own little take on it. I want to still read them, but I want to highlight the best parts. And by the best, I don't mean good. I just mean, the document. There's no best parts. They're horrifying documents. If you haven't been keeping up, I did part 1 and I will do part 2 maybe on Wednesday. I'll say let's give Bryan Kohberger a break and cover another true crime case because I have many to cover and everyone's doing Bryan Kohberger. I know, there's a lot. Melly, you read so good. Thank you, Laura. The end. That was a lot. It was. Thank you. Hello. Awesome job, says Austin. Thank you. Eternal One says, no, I was late. It's okay. I might do a Melly After Dark in a little bit. James Patterson is so good. You should read us another one of his books. I would love to do that. But I actually have something coming up, and I'm not going to tell you guys what it is because people steal my ideas. But I'm reading something really good coming up. I think you like it. I have 2 things. One is a book and one is something else that I think I want to read. So I was saying for anyone that missed it, put it on, just listen to it when you go to bed. That's what I did. One of the ones she's missed. It was really nice. Yeah, this is part 4, the end. So you can get through parts 1, 2, all of them. You can replay them all and re-listen to them. Just like Laura said, while you're drinking some coffee, going memes. I don't know, in the shower. Do you have a speaker? Like, I don't know, figure it out. Just listen to it. Anyways, I appreciate you guys for being here. Thank you, Michi. All of those of you that have been through all the parts. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate it. Let's see each other in the next Melly After Dark, and then I'll be back tomorrow with some more true crime. I'm excited. There's a lot of true crime happening. Do you guys feel like, is the world literally full of true crime, or is it just because we're so deep into, you know, true crime? Because, like, I don't know, like, my sister doesn't know about half the shit we talk about. And I'm like, hello? Like, do you know Bryan Kohberger? Like, hello? And she's like, no, Melly, like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like, I'm looking at her like she's not normal. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, do you know about this case? Do you know about Karen Reed? And she's like, Karen who? And I'm like, it's just me. It's just me. I'm obsessed with true crime. That's all I think about. It's weird. I wondered. Thank you, Cree. It's full of crime, but these big cases are highlighted by us. I just feel like it's everywhere. You're like, well, no shit. You have a true crime channel. It is. I mean, like the Karen Reed, Bryan Kohberger, disgusting pig. You know who I'm talking about, right? Stephen Stearns. I mean, like, and then all the like small, well, not smaller, but like less talked about cases. Like this man got shot here. And then I read one today, like this man shot, stabbed and slit his baby's throat. And I'm like, hello? Like, is anyone peaceful and loving anymore in this world? I'm just kidding. I know you guys are. That's why I love you guys. The world is getting more evil too. And the people on the YouTube streets are getting more evil too. Not you guys, don't get me wrong. Some. I got burnt out on the Karen show. Dang. Yeah, we're going to cover it. It's all same. I'm still on the Karen Reed fallout. Yeah, I'll be back to the Karen Reed. I'm trying to get some Karen Reed profesh up here. Like fanatics that know a lot about, that create content, you know. I'm trying. Anyways, make sure you guys hit the like button. Good afternoon. I enjoyed your reading. Thank you, Andrew. Make sure you hit the like button on the way out. Don't forget, turn on your notifications. If you didn't get this one, maybe like refresh it, unsub and resub. I might be going live after this. If not, I will see you guys tomorrow night. We usually do true crime and then Melly After Dark. Please join. We like to have a good time. Shout out to my mods, Laura, Abuelita's Journey, all of you that were here. I appreciate you guys so much, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.
Try to hide away, so all they do is work. But nobody can hide when she gets a hold of that paperwork. So don't you dare come in here acting like a jerk. Dance might make her dance, but new court docs will make her wanna twerk. Dark hair shining in the Cali sun. Melly on the case, so no one and trying to run. You Sims can ask for feet pics, but you getting none. It's crime o'clock with Melly, let's have some fucking fun. So if you're feeling for true crime, like it's a drug, Crime o'clock with Melly is your motherfucking plug. Going so hard on criminals, they'll call their mama for a hug. She's finding out all the stuff they try to sweep under the rug.